I was standing in the hallway of Donghai Third Martial Arts High School when a massive explosion rocked the building. A figure flew out of the Class 5 classroom like a kite with its string cut. He plummeted straight down from the third floor and hit the ground with a sickening thud. After a long moment, the man scrambled to his feet, looking absolutely pathetic. He shook his fist at the classroom and screamed at the top of his lungs. He told the world he was done. He said he wouldn't teach that broken class another day. He shouted that whoever wanted the job could have it because he was finished being tormented. Students and teachers watched the scene unfold, but nobody looked surprised. We were all numb to it by now. That was the third homeroom teacher to flee Class 5 since the semester started less than 2 weeks ago. The news reached Lu Zhan, our grade-level leader, almost instantly. Lu Zhan was built like a bear, but right now, he looked like he had a permanent migraine. Class 5 was a nightmare. The students were rebellious, stubborn, and completely refused to follow rules. To make matters worse, they were all children of the elite and powerful. You couldn't just punish them. Lu Zhan sighed and called an emergency meeting for all the first-year teachers who didn't currently have a homeroom. Within minutes, we were all huddled in the office, exchanging uneasy glances. This was the fourth meeting in 2 weeks regarding the mess that was Class 5. Nobody wanted to touch that class. There were only 10 students in there, but every single one of them was a little demon. They spent every waking hour finding new ways to torture their teachers. Taking that job was just asking for a beating. Everyone, Class 5 needs a new homeroom teacher immediately, Lu Zhan said, his voice grave. Who is willing to go? The promise stands. If you can manage them, your year-end bonus will be doubled. Silence filled the room. Lu Zhan began scanning the crowd like a predator. Teacher Li, he called out. A young teacher named Li jumped, his heart clearly skipping a beat. Director, you know me. I just finished my probation. I don't have the experience. If I go there, I won't last 3 days. Please, find someone else. Lu Zhan frowned and turned to another man. Teacher Chun. Teacher Chun had a jagged scar across his face and was missing his left hand. He was a veteran who spoke with a booming voice. Director, you know me. If I go to Class 5, only one of us is coming out alive, me or the students. Lu Zhan sighed. Chen had just come back from the front lines fighting demonic beasts. He had too much killing intent. He definitely wasn't suitable for a classroom. He kept looking around, but everyone gave him the same, you know me excuse. Finally, Lu Zhan slammed his hand on the desk. Fine, I'll sweeten the deal. I will apply to the school to give the new teacher a bottle of body-tempering liquid. The room went quiet. A few younger teachers looked conflicted. In the corner, I felt my heart race. My name is Su Yang, and I had just recently become a full-time teacher. In this world, martial arts are everything. Demonic beasts roam the wilds, and strength is the only currency that matters. Even for a teacher, your salary and status depend on your cultivation level. Body-tempering liquid was an incredibly rare and expensive resource. It cost at least 500,000 credits on the black market, and even if you had the money, you needed connections to get it. I had been stuck at the peak of the 9th grade martial artist level since I graduated. I couldn't break through to the 8th grade martial ling realm no matter what I tried. That liquid was exactly what I needed. But the thought of Class 5 made my skin crawl. I was recruited specifically to teach martial arts theory, not to be a punching bag. I wasn't sure I could survive their pranks. Suddenly, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in my head. Strongest famous teacher system bound to host. My head throbbed as memories and information flooded my brain. The system was simple. If I guided students to become stronger, I would become stronger too. Newbie mission. Take over Class 5 and become their homeroom teacher. Reward. Random mythic level skill. Failure. System will be retracted. My eyes widened. A mythic skill? Skills were ranked from common to epic, with mythic being the absolute peak. This wasn't even a choice anymore. Even if Class 5 was literal hell, I was going in. I stood up so fast my chair nearly flipped. Director, I'll do it. Every head in the room turned toward me. The other teachers looked at me with pity, as if I were a lamb walking into a slaughterhouse. They probably thought I was just a naive kid who fell for the director's big prize trap. Lu Zhan looked overjoyed. Excellent. Teacher Su, let's go handle the paperwork right now. He grabbed me and hurried toward the office before I could change my mind. As I followed him, the system chimed again. Mission complete. Mythic skill acquired. Teacher's invincibility. I checked the skill description in my mind. My jaw nearly dropped. It was a passive skill. Any damage inflicted on me by students in my bound class would be completely negated. Pain, sound, and even taste sensations from their attacks would be blocked automatically. There was no cooldown. I felt a surge of confidence. I had been worried because those kids, despite being lazy, were loaded with resources. Most of them were already 8th grade martial lings with high-end equipment. They could have easily crippled me. But now, they couldn't touch me. After the paperwork was signed, Lu Zhen patted my shoulder. Xiaosu, I'm counting on you. Don't worry, Director, I replied. Then I leaned in closer. About that body-tempering liquid. You aren't just dangling a carrot, right? Lu Zhen looked serious, though I could tell he was sweating a bit. I'm the grade leader. My word is my bond. If I can't get that application approved, I'll eat this marble desk right in front of you. Good enough for me, I said, smiling. As I walked out of the administrative office, the system updated again. New mission, raise any student's evaluation to grade D. Reward, newbie gift pack. The system ranked students from S down to E. A grade C was considered a passing grade. I stopped in my tracks as I looked at the student files. My heart sank. Out of 10 students, I couldn't find a single one who even reached a grade D. These kids weren't just bad, they were starting from the bottom of the barrel. The situation was even more ridiculous than I imagined. I stood outside the Class 10 classroom, taking a deep breath. The room was massive, over 200 square meters, split into 2 sections. One side was a standard study area with a blackboard and 10 desks. The other side was a full-blown training zone, packed with fitness equipment and racks of lethal weapons like spears, swords, and staffs. Inside, the students were whispering loudly. I could hear every word. I did some digging, one voice sneered. The new homeroom teacher is named Su Yang. He's only a grade 9 martial artist. They brought him in specifically to teach martial arts theory. Grade 9? That's it, another voice scoffed. He's weaker than us. How does he have the nerve to be our teacher? I bet he won't last a single day. He won't even last a single class, a short-haired boy said, rolling up his sleeve. He revealed a sleek, high-tech wrist launcher. Let's see how he likes the Thunderbolt needle. It's silent, fast, and impossible to track. It won't kill him, but the high-voltage shock will paralyze him instantly. Even a grade 6 martial master would go numb. Someone as weak as him, he'll probably wet his pants. Isn't that a bit much? A girl asked, sounding hesitant. If he actually pees himself, he'll die of embarrassment. As she spoke, she casually picked up a heavy metal spiked club. Maybe I should just sneak up and bash him a few times instead. If the needle kills his pride, your club will just kill him. A burly boy interrupted, looking annoyed. Martial artists should fight face-to-face with real blades. Sneak attacks are beneath us. Then take off your electric knuckle dusters before you talk, you hypocrite, the girl snapped back. A boy keeping watch at the door suddenly hissed. He's here. The room went silent instantly. Everyone scrambled back to their seats, sitting upright with mock seriousness. I stepped into the doorway and paused. The silence was deafening. 10 teenagers were staring at me, looking far too well-behaved. This wasn't the class of demons I had heard about. This was a trap. But then I remembered my invincible teacher skill. I had nothing to fear. I walked straight to the podium, acting like everything was normal. Hello, everyone, I said. Stand up, the class monitor, Zhu Tao, barked. They all stood in perfect unison. Good morning, teacher. I was genuinely surprised. I expected them to throw insults, not greetings. Please sit. My name is Su Yang, and I'll be your new homeroom teacher. As I spoke, I focused my vision. The system's information panels flickered into existence over their heads. I looked at Zhu Tao first. Asterisk flaws. Unstable foundation due to drug overdose, rush growth. Cultivation efficiency, negative 244%. Asterisk. Advice. Change to a compatible heart method and restart training. Negative 244%. My heart skipped a beat. How was that even possible? And the system wanted me to modify his family's secret technique? If I could do that, I wouldn't be a high school teacher. I moved my gaze to the short-haired boy, Li Yiming. Asterisk name, Li Yiming. Realm, grade 8 martial ling compatibility, 9%. Asterisk flaws, dull natural talent. Lack of ambition. Cultivation efficiency, -4, 27%. Advice, reincarnate and try again. I nearly choked. Zhu Tao was actually the best student in the class. Everyone else was sitting at -400% efficiency, and the system's advice for all of them was basically give up on life. It was a disaster, but I had the system. I just had to find a way to make it work. I decided to start with Zhu Tao. If I could find a basic school manual that suited him better, he might actually improve, assuming his wealthy family didn't kill me for suggesting he ditch their secret technique. While I was lost in thought, the students were exchanging looks. Now, under his desk, Li Yiming aimed his wrist launcher at my thigh. A faint flash of light flickered from his sleeve. The thunderbolt needle hissed through the air, silent and invisible to the naked eye. It hit me square in the leg. 1 second passed. 2 seconds. I didn't move. I didn't twitch. I didn't even feel a tickle. I was still standing there, staring into space, trying to figure out how to fix their grades. The students were stunned. Why wasn't I screaming? Why wasn't I convulsing on the floor? The girl with the club couldn't help herself. Hey, teacher. I snapped out of my thoughts and looked at her. Yes? What is it? Are your legs numb? She asked, her voice trembling. I glared at her. My legs are fine. Why are you asking about my legs? That's a very strange question. I cleared my throat and began the lesson, diving into martial arts general knowledge. I talked about how monsters were evolving to mimic human forms and how understanding their biology was the only way to win. To my surprise, the class was quiet. They weren't causing trouble. In fact, they were staring at me with intense, wide-eyed focus. It felt eerie. 3 teachers had already quit this class. There was no way they were behaving just because I was handsome. They were definitely planning something big. But it didn't matter. With my passive skill active, I was ready for whatever hell they wanted to unleash. I was going to see this through to the end. I was betting everything on these students. If I could guide them to improve, the system would reward me with power. I wanted to change my fate, reach the peak of martial arts, and maybe even marry a Valkyrie. So, the moment class ended, I gave Class 5 some self-study time and bolted to the school library. I needed to find a cultivation technique that actually suited Zhu Tao. As soon as I left, the classroom turned into a hornet's nest. Everyone swarmed around Li Yiming. What happened? One of them hissed. Did you forget to charge your thunderbolt needle? Why is he perfectly fine? I don't know. Li Yiming pulled back his sleeve, revealing the launcher on his wrist. He had been scratching his head for the entire lesson. The thunderbolt needle was supposed to be foolproof. He checked the device and frowned even harder. It's fine. Look, the light is green. The power is full. The group stared at the tiny green LED. It was functioning perfectly. That makes no sense, a student muttered. If it's working, why did he act like nothing happened? Maybe I should shoot you and see? Li Yiming snapped. Get lost. I'm not your guinea pig. While they were arguing, a sharp gasp came from the front of the room. It was the class monitor, Zhu Tao. He was staring at the floor, his face pale as he picked up a metal needle, snapped clean in two. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Li Yiming's eyes nearly popped out of his head. That's impossible. These needles are made of reinforced alloy. They don't just break. Maybe it was a fake, someone suggested. Bullshit, Li Yiming yelled. You saw it work on the first teacher. He was twitching on the floor for 10 minutes. Zhu Tao didn't join the shouting. He held the broken pieces up to the light, his expression grim. It wasn't a defect. Then what was it? Zhu Tao placed the 2 halves on a desk for everyone to see. Look at the tip. The students leaned in and felt a collective chill run down their spines. The needle hadn't just snapped. The sharp point had been crushed flat. The girl with the club gasped, her pupils shrinking in fear. What does that mean? She whispered. It means, Zhu Tao said after a long silence, that the needle hit something harder than itself. We all saw it hit his leg. The only explanation is that his body is like reinforced steel. He has to be a rank 6 martial grandmaster. Meanwhile, I was oblivious to their panic. I swiped my ID card and entered the library. In this era, libraries were mostly digital, housing massive databases of basic information. The high-level stuff was reserved for elite universities, but I just needed a foundation for Zhutao. My own technique, the 9 Refinements Body Scroll, was a standard issue manual from my teacher's college. My talent was mediocre, so I had been stuck at a bottleneck for years. My family was poor, and I couldn't afford expensive body tempering liquids, so I had to rely on this system. I sat down at a computer and started searching. The system could check compatibility, but I had to do it one by one. System, check this one for Zhutao. Compatibility, 6%. How about this? Compatibility, 11%. I rubbed my temples. The national database had over 30,000 basic techniques. Checking them one by one was like looking for a needle in a haystack. By the time I found the right one, Class 5 would have already graduated. You're a bit outdated, aren't you? I muttered to the system. No bulk skin feature? The system stayed silent. I had to get creative. Martial arts were vast, but they generally fell into 4 categories: body arts, weaponry, movement, and defense. I decided to test the broad categories first. Zhutao was currently practicing a fist technique, but the compatibility was low. I tried palm techniques, then leg techniques. 9 Yang Palm. Compatibility, 34%. That was better than his current style. My theory was working. Divine Wind Kick. Compatibility, 24%. After 20 minutes of filtering through body arts, everything peaked around 30%. I switched to weaponry. I tried swords, spears, and staves. Compatibility, 44%, 47%, 48%. I felt a surge of excitement. We were breaking into the high 40s. Was he a natural with weapons? I kept digging until I hit a specific subcategory. Heart-piercing needle technique? Compatibility, 107%. Holy crap, I shouted. The silent library turned into a sea of glares. I turned beet red and started bowing, whispering apologies to everyone around me. My heart was racing. I couldn't believe my luck. A compatibility over 100% was insane. But there was a catch. It was a needle technique. That was a concealed weapon style. It was a massive jump from his current fist techniques. The mechanics of power delivery were completely different. If a basic needle technique hit 100%, it meant there might be something even higher out there. I spent another hour scanning similar styles, but nothing beat it. The truth was clear. Zhutao was a natural-born hidden weapon specialist. It was a niche path. Most people ignored it because guns were more efficient. To make a needle as deadly as a bullet, you needed to be a high-ranking martial master. But for someone with his compatibility, the sky was the limit. In this world, true powerhouses were rare. Even the vice principal of Donghai 3rd Martial Arts High, Lin Jinghua, was only a half-step martial master. He had been stuck at that bottleneck for 20 years, unable to break through. But I had a different approach. Compatibility was the key to efficiency. If I could find a technique that perfectly matched Zhutao, I could flip his negative cultivation speed into something legendary. I sat at the computer and filtered the database for needle-based techniques. There were 724 in total. The heart-piercing technique was the most popular, but I wanted something better. I had time. The school didn't have a rigid schedule, and teachers mostly just supervised self-study sessions. Given the state of Class 5, my supervision didn't mean much anyway. They probably wouldn't listen to me yet. I decided to let them simmer while I worked. I opened my notepad and started recording the results. The hanging in technique sat at 94%. The 9 silken needles hit 87%. My theory was holding up. Zhutao was a natural with needles. Every technique I checked in that category was scoring above 80%. Then, my breath hitched. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The Lotus Severing Yang technique showed a compatibility of 213%. It was exactly what I had hoped for. A score over 200% would skyrocket his efficiency. I eagerly clicked on the digital manual. The name sounded like an ancient style. Modern techniques usually had flashy, dramatic names like Phoenix Dance or Thunder Ruin. Most were just rehashes of old styles created by eccentric geniuses. But as I scrolled through the first page, my excitement turned to pure disgust. The cultivation method was insane. To practice the Lotus Severing Yang technique, the user had to repeatedly strike their own groin. The goal was to use extreme physical pain to force their chi to flow in reverse. On top of that, It required a rare plant called lotus white to act as a catalyst. A giant red warning at the bottom of the page delivered the final blow. The required plant is extinct. This manual is for reference only. I rolled my eyes and sighed. What a waste of time. I wasn't about to tell a student to do that to himself for a plant that didn't even exist anymore. While I was buried in the library, Class 5 was eerily silent. My 10 students were huddled together in the study area, their faces twisted with confusion. They were whispering, trying to make sense of what had happened earlier. "There's no way Su Yang is a martial master," one of them hissed. "Look at him. He's barely 28. If he were a genius of that level, he'd be recruited by the National Defense University, not teaching at a second-rate high school." Another student nodded. "Exactly. Think about the money. A martial master can make hundreds of thousands a month hunting mutated beasts. Why would he settle for a teacher's salary?" Zhu Tao sat there with his brow furrowed. He looked at the 2 needles he had recovered. "Then how do you explain these? If he doesn't have a body of steel, how did he block my thunder needles?" The group went quiet. Nobody had an answer. Finally, Li Yiming spoke up. "Maybe he strapped steel plates to his legs. He probably knew we were going to pull something and came prepared." The tension in the room eased as they latched onto that theory. It made sense. He was just a guy playing tricks. But the girl with the mace didn't look convinced. She slammed her heavy weapon onto the table, the metal clanging against the wood. "Only one way to find out. I'll just sneak up and give him a real hit. We'll see how his steel plates hold up against this." Outside the classroom, other students and teachers were starting to notice the change. Usually, Class 5 was a den of chaos. Today, it was quiet. People started whispering in the hallways. They heard the new teacher, Su Yang, had somehow brought the class to heel. The news traveled fast. It reached the office of Lu Zhen, the grade supervisor. He was in the middle of drinking his tea when a colleague walked in, laughing. "Old Lu, you really have a sharp eye for talent," the teacher said. "That young Su Yang actually managed to quiet down Class 5 on his first day. I just walked by, and they were actually sitting there talking instead of fighting. It's like a different world in there." Lu Zhen choked. A spray of tea flew across his desk, soaking his paperwork. He stared at his colleague, eyes wide. He actually did it? He controlled them. He looked down at his marble desk, his mind racing, wondering exactly what kind of monster he had hired. Back in the library, I was hitting a wall. I had spent the entire morning filtering through those 724 techniques. I found 27 manuals with compatibility over 200%, but every single one was useless. They were either too extreme, required extinct materials, or needed the blood of ancient beasts that had long since mutated into something else. The world was a mess. The island country was falling apart due to nuclear mutations, begging for international help. China sent clean water, mostly so their people could survive long enough to keep fighting the monsters. Across the ocean, the Eagle country was fractured, caught in an endless civil war between local warlords. Only China remained stable. I rubbed my eyes. I couldn't give my students these extreme techniques. It went against everything I believed in as a teacher. I wanted them to be successful, not broken. I kept digging, refusing to give up. Another 30 minutes passed, and then I saw it. A needle technique with massive compatibility that didn't require self-mutilation. I leaned in, my hope returning. This new technique had a compatibility rate of 347%. It was called the Heaven-Mending Cloud Needle. Just by the name, I could tell the ancient creator was likely a decent person, even if the title was a bit flashy. I couldn't wait. I clicked the file open and started reading. After a few moments, my expression turned strange. The manual wasn't extreme at all. In fact, it was incredibly ordinary. Compared to other high-level techniques, it actually looked a bit low-grade. Most top-tier manuals could guarantee a path to the 6th-rank martial sovereign realm if nothing went wrong. But this needle technique? Its ceiling was only the 7th-rank martial profound realm. The creator turned out to have been a tailor. He had gained enlightenment for this technique after years of stitching clothes under the moonlight. I was shocked that a tailor's insight could result in over 300% compatibility. I bookmarked it, but didn't commit yet. I kept scrolling, hoping for a better harvest. I filtered through all 724 manuals. In the end, only the Heaven-Mending Cloud Needle remained. I was satisfied with the compatibility. If Zhu Tao was willing to start over and practice this, his efficiency would be legendary. But there was a problem. The technique was low-grade. Why would a rich kid like Zhu Tao be interested? His family would never agree to it. I hit a dead end. I hadn't even earned the trust of Class 5 yet. There was no way they would cooperate with a total reset of their cultivation. I copied the data, left the library, and headed back to my office. Meanwhile, Li Yiming was crouching by the classroom door, spying on the hallway. When he saw me approaching, he scrambled back inside. "The guy named Su is back," he hissed. "What kind of homeroom teacher skips class for a whole morning? Let's report him to the academic affairs office." The students were fuming. I had taught one general knowledge class and then vanished until after lunch. Now that I was back, they wanted to test my depth. Everyone turned their eyes toward Zhu Tao. They had spent the morning arguing, and Zhu Tao was still stuck on his theory. He was convinced I was a hidden 6th-rank martial sovereign. He was the brain of Class 5, and he was willing to bet his allowance on it. "How do we test him?" one girl asked. "Let me just sneak up and hammer him." "No." Zhu Tao grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. "If he really is a high-rank expert, you'll die. You only ever aim for the back of the head. I want to be a delinquent, not a murderer." "Is there a difference?" she muttered. After a quick debate, they settled on a plan. Zhu Tao would go to my office and lure me into the training zone. Once the plan was set, Zhu Tao headed out. Every teacher had a private office for meditation. After all, martial arts never stop. I was sitting at my desk, trying to figure out how to persuade, Zhu Tao into ditching his family legacy for the needle technique. Suddenly, there was a knock. I looked up and saw the boy himself. Talk about perfect timing. "Hey, Zhu Tao, what brings you here?" I asked. Zhu Tao looked at me blankly. "There's a spot in the classroom we don't understand. We need you to come give us some pointers." I blinked. I didn't believe him for a second. This was definitely a trap. Why would they need pointers in a specific spot? But then, an idea struck me. "Zhu Tao, let me ask you something. Just a hypothetical." Zhu Tao looked confused. "What? If a perfect basic technique appeared right in front of you, one that could make your cultivation speed explode, but you had to abandon your current path and start over, what would you choose?" Zhu Tao looked at me like I was an idiot. Who would throw away years of hard work to start from scratch? All that effort would go down the drain. "I guess I'd have to ask what kind of technique it is," he said cautiously. "For example, a needle technique," I said. Zhu Tao's eyes lit up instantly. "You mean like the kind of needle technique you use with girls? A dual cultivation method?" My face went red. "You brat. If I had something like that, do you think I'd give it to you? You're way too arrogant. Have some respect for your teacher." I forced a polite but awkward smile. Students from other classes usually just gave me high blood pressure. Class 5 was trying to give me a heart attack. I told myself to stay calm. If I blew up now, I'd never get them to cooperate later. Zhu Tao curled his lip. "A basic technique is useless anyway. At best, it gets you to the sovereign rank. My family technique can take me all the way to martial emperor." I gave a dry laugh, but didn't argue. With his current attitude, he'd be lucky to reach sovereign. If he kept slacking, he'd probably regress back to a 9th-rank trainee. Cultivation is like rowing against the current. These kids were in speedboats provided by their families, but they were driving them in reverse. Still, I was jealous. A martial emperor technique was a priceless treasure that normal families couldn't even dream of touching. "Are you coming to help or not?" Zhu Tao snapped, losing patience. "If not, I'm leaving." His attitude stung. In all my years of teaching, I'd never been treated like this by a student. He needed a lesson, but I had to play the long game. I wanted to see what they were up to and find a chance to establish some real authority. "Lead the way," I said, standing up. We walked to the classroom. As we reached the door, Zhu Tao sped up and stepped inside first. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Li Yiming hiding in a corner, his hand tucked into his sleeve, ready to strike. He gave Zhu Tao a look. The other students were in the training area, pretending to practice while watching us. I walked into the room, my back turned toward Li Yiming. I wasn't ready to give up on the needle technique yet. I reached out and put a hand on Zhu Tao's shoulder. "Zhu Tao, let me ask one more." Zhu Tao's heart skipped a beat. Before I could finish, a dozen thunderbolt needles hissed out of Li Yiming's sleeve. They were silent and blindingly fast. In the blink of an eye, they slammed into my back. Li Yiming, you idiot! Zhu Tao screamed. Zhu Tao couldn't escape. Since my hand was on his shoulder, the massive electrical current surged right through me and into him. His entire body went stiff. His muscles locked up, and he collapsed forward. Zhu Tao? What happened? I yelled. I saw him go rigid and instinctively caught him. But the moment I touched him, his body began to twitch violently. It was like he was having a massive seizure. My face went pale. Zhu Tao, don't scare me like this. The classroom erupted in chaos. Teacher Su, let go. Let go of him, they screamed. If you don't let go, he's dead. I panicked and let go. Thud. Zhu Tao hit the floor like a piece of wood. He was foaming at the mouth, his body jerking rhythmically, and a faint smell of urine began to fill the air. Get him to the infirmary. Now. Minutes later, I was standing outside the school clinic, pacing back and forth in a cold sweat. The students of Class 5 were staring at me with the strangest expressions. They looked completely baffled. It was as if they were thinking, who the hell is this guy? The students were staring at me like I was some kind of monster. I could practically see the gears turning in their heads. They were wondering if I was secretly a 6th-rank martial sovereign. If I wasn't, how could my back be turned into a pincushion without me feeling a thing? But if I was a sovereign, how could I be so oblivious? I hadn't even noticed when Li Yiming snuck up behind me on the way to the clinic to retrieve his needles. Even a martial sovereign would have reacted to that much electricity. Having a body of steel doesn't make you immune to a lightning strike. My own head was spinning. I knew exactly why I was fine. It was my invincible teacher's skill. It neutralized all damage directed at me, which was why I hadn't felt a thing. But I couldn't tell them that. If something happened to Zhu Tao, my career was over. I wouldn't just lose my job. I'd be heading straight to prison to spend my life behind a sewing machine. I had to take control of the situation. I put on my sternest teacher face and glared at them. Who's going to tell me what happened? I demanded. Why is Zhu Tao like this? The students exchanged nervous glances. They looked at me like I was playing a prank. One of them muttered, "Do you really not know? If I knew, would I be asking you?" I snapped. A life is on the line here. Stop playing games. Li Yiming looked up at me, his face pale and full of despair. He knew that once Zhu Tao woke up, he was a dead man. Teacher Su, I need to request a leave of absence. I stared at him, baffled. A leave of absence? Now. I want to take 3 years off, Li Yiming whispered. I'll come back after Zhu Tao graduates. I'm leaving now. He tried to bolt, but the other students grabbed him. You can't run, you idiot. He knows where you live. Li Yiming pointed a trembling finger at me. It's not my fault. It's his. If he hadn't touched Zhu Tao's shoulder, none of this would have happened. What are you talking about? I yelled. Stop speaking in riddles. Li Yiming couldn't hold it back anymore. Are you wearing a protective steel plate under your shirt? The ones the school gives to the teachers. I froze. The school did provide heavy-duty steel armor for teachers to wear during training to build strength. They were high-tech, insulated, and waterproof. But I was weak. That armor was so heavy I could barely walk in it, so I had left mine gathering dust in my locker. Then I saw the mechanical launcher in Li Yiming's hand. My heart dropped. Thunderbolt needles. Those were special equipment used by the Kunlun Patrol to take down massive beasts. I was about to deny wearing the armor, but I stopped myself. If I wasn't wearing armor, how did I survive? I couldn't explain my secret skill. But then I looked down at my arms. I was wearing a short-sleeved shirt. You'd have to be blind to think I had a full suit of armor underneath this. I'm going inside to check on him, I said, quickly turning away to avoid more questions. See, Li Yiming shouted behind me. He's guilty. I knew it. I heard a loud smack, followed by another student yelling at him. You moron. Use your eyes. He's wearing a t-shirt. Where would the steel plate go? Inside the infirmary, Zhu Tao was finally waking up. He looked dazed, like he'd just come out of heavy anesthesia. I hurried to his bedside. Zhu Tao? How do you feel? He blinked slowly. I think. I saw my great-grandmother waving at me from the light. I let out a long, shaky breath. Thank God. Zhu Tao was an 8th-rank martial apprentice, so his physical fitness was far beyond a normal person's. Since the needles weren't designed to be lethal, he was going to be fine. My dreams of not going to prison were still alive. The second Zhu Tao fully regained his senses, he bolted out of the bed like a lightning bolt. He charged out of the clinic, screaming for Li Yiming's head. I watched from the doorway as Li Yiming screamed and sprinted for his life. Seeing Zhu Tao so energetic made me feel a lot better, but the rest of Class 5 was still watching me with those eerie, suspicious eyes. They were still convinced I was some hidden master. I didn't say a word. If I were actually a 6th-rank sovereign, would I really be wasting my time as a homeroom teacher for these brats? Back to class. All of you, I said coldly. I walked away, leaving them with nothing but the sight of my back. I needed to get to my office and calm down. Back in the classroom, the students gathered in a tight circle. Okay, one of them whispered. Based on everything we saw, he's definitely not a 6th-rank sovereign. Tao, you lost the bet. Zhu Tao sat there with a bruised face, having already caught and thrashed Li Yiming. He looked deep in thought. Li Yiming tried to speak, but Zhu Tao shut him down with a single look. They all agreed on one thing. No more high-voltage weapons against Teacher Su. It was too dangerous for everyone else. There's only one possibility, Zhu Tao said, his voice low and serious. I've heard of a technique called the 9 refinement body script. It's a high-level defensive art. At the 5th level, your skin becomes like bronze and your bones like iron. You aren't a sovereign, but your internal organs become incredibly resistant to shock. He must be practicing that. The class went silent. It was the only explanation that made sense. They didn't know I was just a man with a system, but for now, the mystery of Teacher Su had only grown deeper. If he really trained that technique to the 5th level, there's no way he'd still be a rank 9 practitioner, Zhu Tao muttered, his voice dropping to a serious tone. One of the other students frowned. Wait, is that even possible? Think about it, Zhu Tao said, looking around at the circle of delinquents. How do we determine someone's rank? Machine testing. They measure power, agility, and endurance. Each of those is broken down into a dozen subcategories: lifting strength, grip strength, explosive power. Everything gets averaged out. Light bulbs started flickering on in their heads. One student gasped, eyes wide with realization. You mean, this guy Su spent every single second of his life dumping his stats into defense? Zhu Tao nodded slowly. Exactly. He's a specialist. A freak. When he took his rank exam, his endurance and physical resistance probably broke the machine, but everything else, his speed, his actual combat power, must have been pathetic. That's why his final average came out to rank 9. The room went silent as the pieces clicked into place. Suddenly, the hidden master wasn't so scary anymore. He wasn't a sovereign, he was just a human shield. It explained everything. It explained why he had the guts to be our homeroom teacher. He wasn't brave. He just had thick skin and didn't mind getting hit. So he's just a tank with no damage output, Li Yiming muttered, rubbing his bruised face. He's still a rank 9, Zhu Tao reminded them, though he looked annoyed. I still lost the bet. I thought he was a sovereign. Grudgingly, Zhu Tao pulled out 30,000 yuan in pocket money and started distributing it to the group. He hated losing, and he hated me even more for making him look like a fool. But as he handed out the cash, Zhu Tao's mind raced back to our conversation in the office. I had asked him about switching his cultivation to a needle technique. At the time, he thought I was an idiot. Now he wasn't so sure. If I had managed to build such an insane level of defense that even high-voltage needles couldn't touch me, maybe I knew something he didn't. Was there a secret method to speed up cultivation? And why needles? He looked down at his own long, slender fingers, lost in thought. Meanwhile, back in my office, I was also lost in thought, but for much darker reasons. I hadn't even started working with Class 5 yet, and I had already managed to get their leader electrocuted. The relationship was worse than ever. If I couldn't get these kids to cooperate, my system tasks would never get done. No tasks meant no rewards. No rewards meant I'd be a loser forever. I couldn't just suck up to them. A teacher needs authority. If I acted like a doormat, they'd never respect me. I needed a different approach. These kids were young, arrogant, and hot-headed. That was their biggest weakness. I stood up and headed back to the classroom. The moment I walked in, the atmosphere turned hostile. They stared at me like I was an intruder. We don't have a grudge, do we? I asked, keeping my voice calm. No need for those looks. We didn't before, Li Yiming spat, stepping forward. But we do now. Teacher Su, You and I are done. We're enemies for life. I suppressed a smirk. This was exactly what I needed. I'm a victim here too, remember? But fine. If you want to play it that way, let's make a bet. If you win, I'll leave you alone. You can do whatever you want in my class, and I won't say a word. But if you lose, you follow my orders and study exactly how I tell you to. Deal. Li Yiming's eyes lit up. He opened his mouth to shout, yes, but Zhu Tao suddenly lunged forward and slammed a hand over his mouth. Don't be an idiot. Zhu Tao hissed at him. Did you forget everything we just talked about? It's a trap. He's trying to bait you into a fight because he knows his defense is unbeatable. Li Yiming blinked, realizing he'd almost walked right into it. Oh, you sneaky old fox. You were trying to get me to hit you, weren't you? I narrowed my eyes. What analysis? Zhu Tao stepped forward, a smug look on his face. We know your secret, Su. You've mastered the 9 refinement body script. You're just a human sandbag. You want us to have a contest of who can take the most hits, right? Forget it. We aren't falling for such a pathetic trick. The rest of the class chimed in, mocking me for such a childish plan. Oh, is that so? I sighed, looking disappointed. That's a shame. I guess I'll just have to find someone else to tell about that student in class 5 who got shocked so hard he wet his pants in the infirmary. The room went dead silent. Zhu Tao's face turned from smug to a violent shade of purple. His eyes bulged, and his veins looked like they were about to pop. You despicable, low-life scumbag, he roared, lunging at me. Tao, stop. It's a trap, Li Yiming yelled, trying to hold him back. He's baiting you. It's a low-level provocation. Zhu Tao kicked Li Yiming away with a snarl. He's talking about me. This isn't a trap, it's personal. He turned back to me, teeth gritted. Don't think just because you've got bronze skin and iron bones that I can't break you, Su. I didn't bother correcting his theory about my defense technique. It wasn't like the system was going to give me a raise for explaining it. So, I said, tilting my head, are we betting or not? Fine, we'll bet. Zhu Tao yelled. But on my terms. We're not fighting. What are the terms? Speed, Zhu Tao said, his voice dripping with venom. We go to the training field. 100-meter sprint. Whoever crosses the finish line first wins. Do you have the guts? I hesitated for a split second. My invincible teacher status only made me immune to their attacks. It didn't actually make me faster or stronger. I was still just a rank 9 practitioner. Zhu Tao was a rank 8 martial spirit. In a foot race, he should be able to smoke me easily. But I had a few tricks up my sleeve. Fine, I said. But let's be clear. If you lose and try to back out, that story about the wet pants is going public. Zhu Tao looked like he was going to have a stroke. A gentleman's word is his bond. Let's go. Now, I snapped my fingers and turned on my heel, walking out of the classroom without another word. The students of Class 5 all turned their heads in unison to look at Zhu Tao. Tao, he agreed way too fast, Li Yiming whispered, his brow furrowed. There's a trap. He's definitely got something up his sleeve. Zhu Tao's eyes turned cold. He looked thoughtful for a moment, but didn't back down. A few minutes later, the whole gang was at the training field. We marked out the starting line and the finish line, roughly 100 meters apart. Li Yiming stepped up to act as the starter. Zhu Tao and I stood at the line, crouching into our starting stances. We locked eyes, and I could tell we both had the same idea. The bet was about speed, but I hadn't specified any other rules. I had a plan. The moment Li Yiming gave the signal, I was going to lunge forward and grab Zhu Tao. With my invincible teacher skill active, any force he used to struggle would be counted as an attack against me. The damage would be nullified, and I'd use the momentum to hurl him away. He'd lose for sure. I was already celebrating internally. Across from me, Zhu Tao was thinking the exact same thing. He figured I was hiding my true strength, so he wasn't going to play fair either. He planned to grab me the second the race started and use his rank 8 martial spirit strength to slam me into the dirt. In his mind, I wouldn't be able to break free, and he'd toss me like a rag doll. On your marks, Li Yiming shouted, watching us closely. Get set. Go. The signal rang out. Neither of us moved toward the finish line. Instead, we both lunged inward, slamming into each other in a massive bear hug. Suyong, Zhu Tao roared. Zhu Tao, I grunted. The students stood there, jaws dropping. Zhu Tao reacted first, gritting his teeth, and putting all his strength into a massive heave to throw me. But his face went pale instantly. It was like he was trying to lift a mountain. My feet were rooted to the earth, immovable and solid. "What the hell?" he gasped. I didn't budge an inch. I let out a sharp shout and exerted every bit of strength I had. Because his struggle counted as an attack, my defense was absolute. I hoisted him off the ground and, with a desperate heave, swung him behind me. I threw him with everything I had. The moment he left my hands, I turned and sprinted toward the finish line like my life depended on it. My legs were moving like a blur. Behind me, Zhu Tao managed to stabilize himself in midair and landed on his feet, but he had been tossed 10 meters back. By the time he looked up, I was already at the finish line, doubled over and wheezing for air. My face was flushed, but I had made it. The students rushed over to Zhu Tao, looking completely bewildered. "Tao, what happened? How did he throw you?" Zhu Tao's face was dark, his expression twisted in disbelief. "I guessed wrong. This guy, he's mastered the immovable stance from the 6th level of the 9 refinement body art." "Immovable stance," the others repeated, confused. "My strength was completely neutralized," Zhu Tao muttered, his voice trembling with frustration. "I couldn't move him at all." They all looked back at me. I was still gasping for breath, looking like a total mess. One of the students whispered, "Just how much does this guy fear pain? He literally hasn't learned a single skill that isn't defensive, has he?" I straightened up, feeling a wave of satisfaction wash over me. "Zhu Tao, a bet is a bet. You're not going to go back on your word, are you?" Zhu Tao clenched his fists, his pride wounded, but he eventually barked out, "I keep my word. From today on, I'll practice according to your instructions." I was thrilled. It was just the first step, and I knew he still hated my guts, but it was a start. I saw the way the rest of the class was looking at me, wary and suspicious. I knew I could only pull a stunt like that once. Next time, they wouldn't fall for it. But I'd cross that bridge when I got to it. My priority was getting Zhu Tao to try the needle technique. Once he tasted the benefits, he'd realize I wasn't the enemy. Back at the school building, I called Zhu Tao into my office. He stood there, looking like he wanted to punch me. I straightened my posture and put on my most serious teacher face. "A real man sticks to his word," I said. "Right now, I'm the teacher and you're the student. Give me the proper attitude. Stand up straight." Zhu Tao's eyes flared with resentment, but he stiffened his back. "So why am I here? Is that how you address your teacher?" He nearly ground his teeth to dust. "Su, Teacher Su, what are your orders?" "I want to talk to you about dual cultivating heart methods," I said. Zhu Tao jumped back, looking horrified. "Dual cultivating? With a man? You're sick." I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. "What is wrong with your head? I mean practicing 2 different internal techniques at the same time." Zhu Tao stared at me like I had lost my mind. "Are you joking? How could I possibly do that? Do you think I'm some kind of once-in-a-thousand-years genius? Usually, a martial artist picks one path and sticks to it. You might upgrade from a basic technique to an advanced version of the same type, like how I went from the rock script to the 9 refinement body art. But if the techniques are different, you usually have to choose, dual cultivate or reset your cultivation entirely. Resetting, or dispersing your gong, is dangerous. In the old days, people broke their own meridians to do it, which often left them crippled. Nowadays, the government provides high-tech equipment to do it safely, but it's mostly for kids who started on the wrong path. For someone Zhu Tao's age, resetting would mean losing years of progress and requiring a fortune in resources to catch back up. His family would never agree to that. That's why I wanted him to dual cultivate the cloud patching needle technique, which had a 347% compatibility rate with him. In theory, dual cultivating means managing 2 different flows of energy in your body. If they clash, your progress stalls or your strength regresses. Unless you're a genius, you can't handle 2 flows at once without them fighting each other. Zhu Tao clearly knew his own limits. He knew he wasn't that kind of genius. I looked him dead in the eye, my expression grave. "Zhu Tao, I've been observing you for a long time. I've noticed your skeletal structure is unique, and your inner aura is soaring. The truth is, you are a once-in-a-century martial arts prodigy. You have the potential to become a martial god." Zhu Tao frowned and immediately pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Calling the police," he he said flatly. I'm reporting a telemarketing scam. I stopped trying to convince him to reset his cultivation. Instead, I pivoted to dual cultivation. Suyang, he said, his voice dropping an octave as his face darkened. Why are you so obsessed with making me learn needle techniques? I'm starting to think you have an ulterior motive. You have talent, I said firmly. Specifically, a talent for needle-based arts. And how exactly did you figure that out? I'm a teacher, I lied, the words coming out smooth and practiced. I observe. Even though it's only our first day, the moment I touched you, I knew. It's a teacher's intuition. Your fingers possess an extraordinary level of flexibility. Zhu Tao blinked. He instinctively looked down at his own hands. I twitched a little. This kid was clearly struggling to process the idea. I rapped my knuckles on the desk to snap him back to reality. He looked up, looking completely baffled. I've been alive for 16 years and never noticed any needle talent, he muttered. I've never even touched a needle and thread. Then maybe you should start, I countered immediately. Zhu Tao's face twisted in disgust. I'm a grown man. Fiddling with needle and thread is embarrassing. No way. The resistance was strong, but I wasn't worried. I leaned back and delivered the blow. Fine. But your next stage of training is this. Go back to your dorm, take out your old, torn clothes, and mend them yourself. Zhu Tao's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Are you kidding me? I don't know how to sew. The internet is full of tutorials, I said, frowning. You gave me your word that you'd follow my instructions. Are you backing out now? Fine, fine. I'll do it, he snapped. Good. I'll be checking your dorm every night to inspect your progress. I added a quick insurance policy so he wouldn't just throw his clothes away. And if you run out of torn clothes, don't worry. I have plenty you can practice on. Zhu Tao looked like he wanted to punch me. I have enough. Whatever. I waved him off. Great. You can leave now. I need to meditate. If anything happens, come to my office. Once he stomped out, I let out a long sigh. I wasn't entirely sure if this training would work, but with such a high compatibility rate, I figured it was worth a shot. If it failed, I'd just try something else. I shook my head, cleared my mind, and set a timer on my phone. It was time for my own meditation. I sat cross-legged, circulating my inner breath through a full cycle to keep my meridians healthy. I closed my eyes, feeling a thin, thread-like wisp of energy crawling through my body. It moved at a snail's pace. It took 10 minutes just to travel from my lower dantian to the crown of my head, and another 10 to return. When I finally opened my eyes and stopped the timer, I was drenched in sweat. A single cycle had taken nearly 30 minutes. I let out a bitter laugh. My martial arts talent was truly mediocre. The national average was about 21 minutes. I was lagging behind by 7 minutes. Just another day of dragging down the national average. I guess I have to be a great teacher, I whispered to myself. It's the only way I'll ever turn my life around, marry a beautiful Valkyrie, and return home in glory. I turned on my computer and began studying the cloud patching needle technique I had copied. I needed to design an efficient training plan for Zhu Tao before he lost interest. Night fell over the third martial arts high school. The dorms were all single rooms, designed to give students a quiet space for meditation. Most students spent their nights cultivating, but Class 5 was the exception. They were all huddled in one room, screaming at their phones while playing mobile games. They had given up on cultivation long ago. Why bother? Even with all the resources their families threw at them, they were stuck at the 8th grade martial soul realm. They were outcasts, family rejects who decided it was better to enjoy life than waste time on a path that led nowhere. They were all gathered in Li Yiming's room. Where's Tao? Someone asked, eyes glued to the screen. In his own room, another replied. He said he's in seclusion and told us to play without him. The group went silent, exchanged weird looks. What did that Su guy say to him in the office? No idea. He won't talk. Li Yiming looked around his room, his blood boiling. There were snack wrappers and trash everywhere. He was the bottom of the Class 5 food chain. In terms of strength, he was top 3, but his family background was the weakest. He couldn't afford to offend anyone. He had a secret obsession with cleanliness, yet his room was always the designated hangout spot. Just you wait, he thought, gripping a trash can. One day, when my leg techniques are perfected, I'll intercept every piece of trash you throw before it even hits the floor. Next door, Zhu Tao was sitting at his desk. He held a needle in his left hand and a thin thread in his right. His phone was propped up, playing a video. Asterisk. Welcome back, family. Today we're learning the 4 basic stitches that anyone can do. Asterisk. Zhu Tao took a deep breath and tried to thread the needle. To his shock, the thread slid through the eye on the very first try without a single snag. He started sewing a tear in an old shirt. The needle moved with an unexpected fluidity. Within minutes, the tear was closed. The stitches were so neat they were almost invisible. He felt a strange surge of accomplishment. I thought this would be hard. This is actually easy. Then he paused, staring at the shirt. Wait, what the hell does sewing have to do with martial arts? A little while later, I knocked on his door. The room was a bit messy, but not dirty. I noticed a pile of mended clothes on the desk. Not bad, I said, looking around. Kept it clean. Zhu Tao didn't look happy. Tell me the truth. What does sewing have to do with needle techniques? I clasped my hands behind my back, acting mysterious. Sewing requires a delicate touch. It trains your finger flexibility and coordination. It's the foundation for everything that comes next. Zhu Tao rolled his eyes, clearly not buying it. Look, I'm telling you now. I am not resetting my cultivation. And I am definitely not dual cultivating. I didn't want to dwell on the technicalities of the argument. I sat down, looked at Zhu Tao, and asked him straight out if he felt anything special while he was sewing. He just looked at me like I was an idiot. He said it was easy, boring, and that anyone with hands could do it. I raised an eyebrow, not convinced. I asked to see what he'd finished. He handed me the shirt. I turned it over, checking the seams, but I couldn't find where he'd worked. I was genuinely confused. I asked him where the hell he'd sewn it. He pointed to a spot where the fabric had previously burst open. He had tucked the thread ends inside so perfectly that the repair was invisible. My skin crawled a bit. I asked him if this was really his first time sewing. He snapped back, asking what else it could be. I told you that you had talent, I said, my voice rising. A beginner reaching this level is insane. I couldn't do this if I tried. This is raw talent. I realized then that his compatibility with the heaven-mending needle technique was off the charts. The kid must have been a master tailor in a past life. Zhu Tao just snorted. He thought I was blowing smoke to trick him into learning the technique. He told me to stop flattering him and said it didn't change anything. He flatly refused to restart his cultivation. I'm not asking you to restart, I said firmly. I want you to dual cultivate. Practice your family's dragon fist and the heaven-mending needle technique at the same time. He looked baffled. He asked why I thought he could handle 2 paths at once. I asked him if he wanted the polite lie or the ugly truth. He chose the lie first. The lie is that you're a once-in-a-thousand-years martial arts prodigy with the soul of a war god, I told him. He rolled his eyes. He knew I was messing with him. Then he asked for the truth. The truth is you have 0 martial arts talent, I said bluntly. With your family's massive resources, you shouldn't be stuck at the 8th grade martial spirit realm. You have 2 choices. You can keep rotting away like this, being a nobody for the rest of your life, or you can trust your teacher. Give me your trust, and I will give you a future. Zhu Tao's expression turned weird. He told me that with his family's wealth, as long as he didn't commit a crime or try to start a failing business, he could live comfortably for several lifetimes. He asked me what was wrong with a future like that. That hit me hard. I almost choked. I had forgotten that these kids were all silver spoon elites. They weren't born as workhorses. They were born at the finish line. Don't you want your family to look at you with respect? I asked, trying a different angle. Don't you want them to be proud? If you could get into the National Martial Arts Defense University, they'd give you your own page in the family genealogy. Zhu Tao looked at me like I was dreaming. That university was the top school in the country, a place every martial artist dreamed of. He told me to stop selling him fantasies. He wasn't interested. I felt a wave of helplessness. He was like a rock, completely impenetrable. I couldn't force-feed him if he wouldn't open his mouth. I decided not to push too hard. I pulled out a flash drive containing the needle technique and set it on his desk. I told him he could look at it or throw it away, but I'd be back every day to check on his sewing. After I left, Zhu Tao stared at the drive, lost in thought. As I walked back to my own dorm, I replayed our conversation. When I mentioned his parents, his mood had dipped. But when I mentioned the family genealogy, I saw a spark. Every martial artist wanted to be the pride of their ancestors. I knew his background was complicated. He was from the Donghai family, a massive clan. Their leader was a 5th-grade martial king, a top-tier powerhouse. Most of the geniuses in his family were at the city's elite high school, where the entry requirement was the 7th-grade martial mysterious realm. Zhu Tao was only at the middle stage of the 8th grade. The gap between him and his cousins was a canyon. But I remembered his scarred hands. He had worked hard. He had tried to earn their recognition and failed. Back in his room, curiosity finally got the better of Zhu Tao. He plugged in the drive and scanned the file. He was disappointed. The technique looked incredibly basic, nothing compared to his family's high-level arts. He read it over and over, trying to find a hidden secret. The summary was simple: use the needle as a guide and energy as the thread. The weirdest part was the training method. It said he had to use his breath to control the needle while sewing. According to the manual, it would take 3 years just to master the basics. He slammed his desk in a rage. He thought I was mocking him. He imagined himself at the national college entrance exams. While everyone else had swords and spears, he'd be standing there with a sewing kit. But then he paused. He knew I was aware of his family status. I wouldn't risk my career just to play a prank on him. And he knew I had mastered the 6th level of the 9 refinement body technique, so I clearly knew something about cultivation. He leaned back, and dark memories flooded his mind. He remembered his father calling him a waste. He remembered being told that even a pig would have reached the 8th grade with the resources he'd been given. He remembered the threats of being removed from the family tree. I have nothing left to lose, he muttered, his eyes turning cold. Fine, Sue. I'll trust you once. The manual wasn't long. He had already memorized it. He sat cross-legged on his bed, cleared his mind, and began the first step. He started to guide his internal energy, drawing it all back toward his dantian. I watched Zhu Tao as he sat cross-legged on his bed, ready to take the leap. He had to temporarily shut down the automatic circulation of his family's Panlong divine fist technique. He needed to clear the way so his internal energy wouldn't clash with the new breath he was about to cultivate. The process looked grueling. Within moments, he managed to gather all his energy into his dantian. His face twisted in pain, and his stomach muscles spasmed. I could see him grit his teeth, enduring a sharp, stinging sensation that felt like needles from the inside. He stayed focused, though. Once he was sure the old energy was suppressed, he officially started the introductory mental method for the heaven-mending cloud needle. 30 minutes passed in total silence. Suddenly, Zhu Tao snapped his eyes open. He glanced at the clock and looked completely stunned. He had already developed a sense of qi. For a normal cultivator, this was unheard of. He could feel a new wisp of energy forming inside him, distinct from his family's art. The Panlong energy was overbearing and violent, but this new energy was soft and fluid. When he first learned his family's technique, it took him a full month to feel even a spark of energy. He wondered if this new technique was just low-level garbage, or if his foundation was better than he thought. But the stinging in his gut was getting worse. He didn't have time to overthink. He closed his eyes again, guiding that soft energy through his body. He was racing against the clock. The longer he waited, the more intense the pain would become. A short while later, he opened his eyes again, looking even more baffled. He had succeeded. According to the manual, a beginner's energy is supposed to be weak and uncontrollable. It should have taken weeks of patient guiding to complete a single circuit through his meridians. But for Zhu Tao, it felt natural. It was so smooth he started wondering if he was some kind of hidden martial arts prodigy. He couldn't understand how I knew this technique would fit him so perfectly. His excitement started to build. After 10 full circuits, the feeling of energy became incredibly strong. Dual cultivation is usually nightmare-level difficulty, but he had one major advantage. His meridians were already wide open from years of training. His body was ready to be a vessel. Suddenly, a wave of intense hunger hit him. He scrambled to his fridge, grabbed a bag of nutrient solution, and chugged it. These solutions provide the massive amounts of energy needed for cultivation. He finished one, then another, then another. By the time he had downed 10 bags, the energy in his veins was crystal clear. He had mastered the basics in exactly 3 hours and 26 minutes. It was terrifyingly fast. He actually hesitated to continue. In the world of martial arts, there are no shortcuts. Growing too fast usually means your foundation is unstable, which can ruin your future. But then he stopped and sighed. He remembered his foundation was already trashed from all the pills and potions his family forced on him. He had nothing left to lose. He focused the energy into his right thumb and index finger. They began to throb and tremble uncontrollably. He had reached the first stage of the technique, the needle grip. At that exact moment, I was sitting in my faculty dorm, working late to finish his training plan. Suddenly, a surge of pure, powerful energy slammed into my chest. I gasped, feeling it race through my limbs. I immediately dropped to the floor and started meditating to stabilize it. The energy was so refined that I didn't even need to process it. It merged instantly with my own power, causing my thin strands of chi to thicken and glow. The bottleneck I had been stuck at for years, the peak of 9th grade, actually started to crack. I was confused. Where did this come from? I pulled up the system interface and checked Zhu Tao's profile. His stats had shifted. His compatibility with the heaven-mending cloud needle had skyrocketed to 347%. A new trait had appeared, cultivation fanatic. Because his compatibility was over 300%, his training efficiency had jumped to 237%. I couldn't help but grin. This kid. He acted like he hated the idea, but his body was clearly loving it. The system worked perfectly. Every time a student in Class 5 improved, a portion of that progress was fed back to me as pure energy. I didn't have to eat special herbs or spend years training. I just had to teach them well. Zhu Tao had mastered the basics in 4 hours. If he kept this up, I'd break through to the 8th grade in no time. That meant a 500 yuan raise in my base salary. I was ecstatic. However, I knew I couldn't get complacent. The rest of my students still had negative cultivation efficiency. I realized I needed to find techniques with at least 300% compatibility for every one of them to trigger that fanatic trait. I stayed up, keeping a close eye on the system. Dual cultivation is dangerous, and I needed to make sure Zhu Tao didn't explode before he reached a stable point. I watched the clock tick away until the sun started to rise at 7:30 a.m. Day 2 was about to begin. I walked into the school building and saw students from other classes already deep in their morning meditation, preparing for their daily cultivation. But when I pushed open the door to Class 5, the room was dead silent. It was completely empty. My heart sank. I knew these kids were slackers, but this was ridiculous. They weren't even practicing their basics anymore. For a martial artist, morning practice is everything. It's the time when the world's spiritual energy is most abundant and the body's heavenly gates are wide open. It's the foundation of everything we do. If they let this rot, they'd never amount to anything. As their homeroom teacher, I couldn't just stand by. Most of them, except for Zhu Tao, suffered from a disheartened status that tanked their efficiency. I had to get them moving. My first instinct was to storm the dorms and drag them out of bed by their ears, but I stopped myself. Force would only make them hate me more. They'd probably just lock the doors and laugh while I hammered on the wood. I needed a better hook. I needed a trap they'd actually want to walk into. I waited. Around 9 or 10 in the morning, long after the prime cultivation hours had passed, the students finally started trickling in. Zhu Tao was the last one, strolling in at 10:30 looking like he'd been hit by a truck. "Tao, why so late today?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Zhu Tao looked away, his face turning a bit red. He couldn't exactly tell me he'd spent the entire night obsessively sewing clothes because he couldn't stop practicing the heaven-mending needle technique. "Gaming," he muttered. The others didn't suspect a thing. The only reason they were even in the classroom was because the dorm signals were jammed during school hours. If they could have scrolled on their phones in bed, I wouldn't have seen them at all. I walked to the front of the room, putting on my best frustrated face. "Listen," I said, my voice dripping with annoyance. "If you aren't going to show up for morning practice, tell me next time." I dragged myself out of bed at 6:30 for nothing. I could have used the extra sleep. The class froze. They expected a lecture, a screaming match, or a punishment. My reaction caught them completely off guard. "You're a teacher, and you're complaining about wanting to sleep in? You're trash," one of the students sneered. I didn't get angry. I just gave them a mysterious smile. "Why do you think the school put me in charge of Class 5? We're a perfect match." I paused, letting the silence hang. But since you're here, let's play a game. Another trap? Li Yiming rolled his eyes. Pass. It's simple, I said, stepping into the center of the training area. I'll stand right here. You can use any weapon you want. If anyone can make me take even a single step backward, you never have to attend morning practice again. Even if the school checks, I'll cover for you. You can sleep in every single day with no consequences. The room went quiet. Their eyes sharpened. And if we can't move you, someone asked, then nothing happens. No punishment, I shrugged. Is that a promise? A girl carrying a massive spiked mace stepped forward. Her small face twisted into a grin. Before, the class would have been worried she'd kill me, but after seeing me survive the high-voltage needles, they knew I was a human tank. I closed my eyes and suppressed my instinct to dodge. The girl lunged forward, then suddenly blurred, reappearing behind me. She swung the heavy mace with everything she had, slamming it directly into the back of my skull. Clang. The impact felt like a dull thud. The girl's eyes widened as the force of her blow seemed to just dissolve. She swung again and again, grunting with effort, but I didn't budge an inch. Damn it, she yelled, throwing her hands up in frustration. There's no impact. It's like hitting a sponge that swallows all my power. She stomped away, cursing under her breath. My heart was actually hammering in my chest. My body had screamed at me to move, but I'd held firm. I opened my eyes and looked at the rest of them. Nobody else wants a shot. They just stared at me, suspicious. What are you really after, Sue? I raised an eyebrow. Don't you want a body like mine? A physique that can shrug off a mace to the head? They looked unimpressed. Not really. This is a special body tempering method, I said, my voice turning serious. It doesn't matter what your level is. Anyone can learn it. If you follow my training, you can reach my level in 3 years. The condition is simple. Anyone who has perfect attendance for morning practice for 1 month. I'll teach them the first stage. Garbage, someone muttered. Nobody wants your trash techniques. I didn't argue. I just turned around and walked back to my office. I wasn't worried. I dangled a golden carrot in front of them, and I knew how these things worked. I didn't need the whole class to show up. I just needed half of them. This was a classic divide and conquer strategy. Once a few students started showing up, the unity of Class 5 would crack. Education is just a different kind of warfare. This secret technique was just a hook to get them into the system. Once they were in, I'd find their 300% compatibility matches and let the system do the heavy lifting. I could almost hear them talking behind my back, calling me a scammer. Inside the classroom, Zhu Tao sighed. He actually believed me, mostly because his own progress with the needles was already terrifyingly fast. But he thought I was being naive. Most of these kids came from powerful martial arts families. They grew up surrounded by schemes and power struggles. Does he think we're 3 years old? Li Yiming growled once I was gone. A 3-year shortcut to that kind of defense with no prerequisites? Even phone scammers have better scripts than that. He's just trying to break our trust. Don't fall for it. We have to stand united, one of them said. We resist outside enemies together. If anyone goes to that morning practice, they're siding with Sue. You better watch your back. All eyes snapped to Li Yiming. He looked like he was standing on trial. Are you really going to try it? Someone sneered. Li Yiming's expression shifted instantly. He forced a wide, fake smile. I was just joking. Don't take me seriously. I'm with you guys, obviously. Who would believe Su Yang's nonsense? Anyone who shows up for morning practice is a total dog. We'll kill him. Fine. It's settled then, the group agreed. Li Yiming looked at the determined faces around him and felt a wave of depression. Internally, he was screaming. He actually really wanted to learn that technique. We had all seen how powerful my defense was. If he could master that in 3 years, his status in his family would skyrocket. He wouldn't be the nobody standing in the corner during family meetings anymore. But he didn't dare say it out loud. Nobody knew better than Li Yiming how ruthless Class 5 could be. They couldn't touch me, but they could definitely ruin him. I wasn't guaranteed to protect him either. His heart sank to his stomach. Back in his dorm that night, he tossed and turned. He spent the whole night weighing the pros and cons. Finally, he made a choice. He was going to that practice. He'd hit the 1-month mark, get the technique, and keep it a secret. If he got caught, well, he'd just take the beatings. Once his defense improved, and combined with his rank 8 martial spirit strength, They wouldn't be able to hurt him anyway. Besides, he specialized in leg techniques. If things got hairy, he could just outrun them. One gamble, he whispered to himself. Turn this bicycle into a motorcycle. He set his alarm for 7 a.m. but didn't sleep a wink. As soon as the sky turned gray, he threw on his clothes and crept out of his room. The hallways were busy with students heading to class. He kept his head down, blending into the crowd, terrified of being spotted by anyone from Class 5. When he stepped outside, the sun hadn't even risen. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been up for morning practice. The thought of that 3-year shortcut made his heart race. He picked up his pace, his feet practically flying across the pavement. I was already standing by the classroom door when he arrived. Teacher Sue, Li Yiming panted, his voice trembling with excitement. Do you keep your word? I blinked at him and smiled. Of course. Good. I'm starting my practice right now. Great, I said, leaning against the wall. I was just waiting for you. Li Yiming froze. Waiting for me? Yeah, I replied. Everyone else got here before 6 a.m. You're the last one. Li Yiming felt like a complete clown. He cursed under his breath, feeling like he'd been played, and stormed into the classroom. The sight inside stopped him cold. The entire class was already there, sitting in meditation, breathing in perfect rhythm. Zhu Tao was right at the front. He opened one eye and looked at Li Yiming. You're here, Zhu Tao said flatly. Li Yiming gave a pained, awkward smile. I'm here, Brother Tao. I feel ashamed. I broke my promise to the group. I am a dog. From now on, please call me the Tibetan Mastiff of Class 5. Li Yiming nearly choked. Was this really happening? He looked at the student next to him. I'm the Husky, the guy said without looking up. Samoyed here, another whispered. Alaskan Malamute. Schnauzer. Chihuahua. Pomeranian. Li Yiming's head was spinning. Are you guys seriously giving yourselves dog nicknames? He sat down in a huff, finding an empty spot. He looked around, wondering what was left. Fine. I'm the teddy bear. Whatever. He crossed his legs and closed his eyes, his guilt completely gone now that he realized everyone else was just as dishonorable as he was. Outside the door, I listened to them claiming their dog breeds and felt a bit weirded out. I didn't dare go in. I just walked back to my office, laughing to myself. My plan to divide and conquer had failed because there weren't any hard-headed rebels left. They were all just a bunch of tsunderas who wanted to get stronger. This was better than I expected. Having the whole class show up for morning practice was a huge win. My supervisor, Lu Zhen, had set strict goals for me. Keeping them out of trouble wasn't enough. I had to make them act like a real class. I was finally on the right track. Word spread fast. Other teachers passing by the classroom saw Class 5 actually practicing and looked like they'd seen a ghost. In the 2 weeks since school started, nobody had seen a single student from that class move a muscle before noon. Young Su really has a way with them, one teacher whispered. I knew he was special when he covered my general ed class, another added. He's young, he relates to them. But then they started laughing. Old Lu is going to have a headache, though. There's no way he's getting that body-tempering liquid approved by the school. They weren't wrong. When Lu Zhen heard the news, he didn't celebrate. He started looking up online if there were any health risks to eating a marble table. He never thought I'd actually manage to suppress those little monsters. It made no sense. I had zero experience. But he couldn't back down. A leader's word was his bond. If he broke his promise, he'd lose all authority. He had talked himself into a corner. The problem was, you couldn't just apply for body-tempering liquid. I didn't have the seniority to qualify for those resources. Lu Zhen sat in his office, face full of worry. At this point, researching what spices go best with marble seemed more realistic than getting the school to hand over the liquid. I had no idea my boss was contemplating a diet of stone. I was still focused on the kids. Specifically, I was still worried about Zhu Tao's condition. These past 2 days had been intense. I spent the next few hours buried in research about dual cultivation. The more I read, the more I realized how suicidal this path actually was. Imagine your meridians are a narrow, one-lane road. Your chi is a car. Trying to run 2 different types of energy at once is like trying to force 2 cars through that single lane simultaneously. It shouldn't work. There were only 2 theoretical solutions. The first was widening the road. You had to physically expand your meridians, but that required reaching the rank of a 5th-level Grandmaster first. You needed a body made of steel to survive the process. Without that, the sheer pain of your meridians stretching would kill you instantly. The second option was compression. You had to shrink those two cars into bicycles so they could fit side by side. This required insane levels of control and years of practice. Only true martial arts geniuses could pull it off. I knew Zhu Tao was a genius. Anyone who could learn the basics of a needle technique in 4 hours qualified. But he had a bigger problem. His family's Panlong Divine Fist was pure yang energy. The needle technique I gave him was pure yin. They didn't just compete for space. They actively tried to destroy each other. Most people who practiced dual cultivation chose 2 techniques with the same attribute. Nobody was crazy enough to mix fire and ice. As his teacher, I couldn't just let him wander into this blind. I had to give him a direction, or he'd end up blowing himself apart. But I didn't have the talent to rewrite a high-level family manual, and I certainly didn't want the Zhu family coming after me for tampering with their secrets. I was stuck. The system wasn't helping, so I had to rely on my own education. I was a martial arts teaching graduate, after all. I remembered a paper I'd read back at the East Sea Martial Arts Normal University. I logged into the alumni database and searched for a specific keyword, Chaos Chi. I found it. It was a thesis written 12 years ago by a senior who was now a 5th-rank martial king. The paper argued that yin and yang were originally one. If you could find the point where they merged, you'd create Chaos Chi, a neutral energy that could act as a universal fuel for any technique. It was a brilliant theory, but it was just that, a theory. The author hadn't actually tried it. I couldn't let Zhu Tao be the test subject. The risk was too high for a kid. I looked at my own hands and smiled. I had to be the guinea pig. My students all practiced yin-based techniques, while my own 9 refined body art was pure yang. If I could get them to attack me with enough force, their yin energy would seep into my body. With my system's protection, I could experiment on myself without dying. If I pulled this off and published the results, I wouldn't just be a teacher. I'd be the guy the principal stepped down for. Meanwhile, back in the classroom, the morning practice had ended. The students of Class 5 were still sitting cross-legged, looking like they were in a trance. They were all too proud to admit they were actually working hard. One student finally broke the silence. He claimed he only came to the classroom because the hallway was too noisy for him to sleep, and he just happened to sit down and accidentally meditate. It was the most pathetic excuse I'd ever heard. Zhu Tao stood up, his face tight. He told everyone he was only there because he lost a bet to me. He insisted he wasn't doing it for the power or the technique. "We're not giving in to Teacher Sue," someone shouted. "He's just offering too much. 3 years to master the unmovable stance. Nobody can turn that down." They all agreed on one thing. They needed to save face. They decided to collectively skip my general education class. It was their last stand, their way of showing they weren't totally under my thumb. When I showed up for class later that morning, the room was empty. I just rolled my eyes. These kids were the definition of tough talk, soft heart. They were trying so hard to be rebellious while secretly grinding their cultivation. I wasn't worried about the missed lesson. General education only accounted for 20% of the college entrance exam anyway. The real points were in combat and beast defense. I remembered my own exam, protecting a cranky old lady who refused to walk faster while monsters were closing in. If I sent Class 5 into that scenario right now, they'd probably use the old lady as a shield. I closed my books and headed for the cafeteria. I knew that's where they'd be. I didn't care about the skipped class. I just needed them to start hitting me so I could figure out this Chaos Chi. I bolted for the cafeteria without wasting a second. Sure enough, I found the 10 troublemakers from Class 5 huddled together at a large table. They were eating like they hadn't seen food in years, completely ignoring their public image. Slow down," I said, walking up to them. "Nobody is going to steal it from you." I watched in disbelief as one student actually bit a chunk out of the plastic tray in his haste. I told him to watch his image, but he just mumbled back that he didn't have one to begin with. These kids were martial artists, and their bodies burned through energy fast. While nutritional supplements were the efficient choice, they tasted like cardboard. Real food was the only way to satisfy the hunger. As soon as they noticed me standing there, the chewing stopped. The whole table went silent. I sat down next to them and waved my hand dismissively. I told them I wasn't there to bust them for skipping class. "Then what are you doing here?" One of them asked suspiciously. I need a favor, I replied. I want you to hit me. Use everything you've got. They stared at me like I'd lost my mind. The girl with the spiked club had her mouth full of food, making her voice sound muffled and confused. She told me I was a freak and refused to do it. They thought I was setting another trap to get them in trouble. They even joked that if I wanted them to hit me, I'd have to pay extra. I knew they wouldn't cooperate willingly. I stood up and looked over their lunch spread. Without a word, I grabbed a handful of mashed potatoes. Before anyone could react, I slammed the glob of potatoes right into the spiked club girl's face. I didn't wait for a response. I stuck my tongue out and sprinted toward the classroom. Kill him, someone screamed. Break his legs. A few minutes later, the Class 5 classroom was a scene of beautiful, violent harmony. I was right in the middle of it, taking hits from every direction. I kept taunting them, telling them they were weak and asking if they'd skipped breakfast. I needed them angry. I needed them to strike with everything they had. I wasn't sure if their specific energy could penetrate my body while my invincibility skill was active. That skill was a passive trigger. I couldn't just turn it off. But as the chaos peaked, I felt it. A cold, snake-like energy seeped into my skin and began racing through my veins. I wondered if I could actually control the skill's threshold. I took a breath and mentally beckoned the energy inward. Suddenly, a massive wave of energy surged into me, thrashing wildly. I used my internal strength to suppress it, forcing it all down into my dantian. In the cultivation world, this was suicide. Storing that much hostile, foreign energy in your core was like swallowing a live grenade. But I felt nothing. No pain, no damage. After 10 minutes of nonstop pummeling, the students finally gave up. Their stamina was spent. The girl with the spiked club threw her weapon on the floor in frustration. She had been bashing the back of my head for 10 minutes straight, and I hadn't even blinked. They were panting, staring at me with pure hatred because I hadn't even moved an inch from my spot. I felt a slight breeze on my back. I reached around and realized my shirt had been shredded to ribbons. I told them that hitting me was one thing, but stripping me was crossing a line. They just glared back, one of them muttering that next time they'd pull my oxygen plug instead. I beat a hasty retreat to the faculty dorms and changed my clothes. My dantian was now packed with 5 different types of aggressive energy. It was a massive haul, more than enough for my experiments. Normally, I'd be dead 10 times over, but my skill held the damage at bay. The energy was trapped, completely under my thumb. I sat cross-legged on my bed and began the real work. I pulled a single thread of energy from my dantian and forced it into my meridians. I tried to circulate it alongside my own yang energy. The energy was wild, bucking against my control. Even knowing I couldn't be hurt, my heart hammered in my chest. If anyone else tried this, they'd explode instantly. The research papers I'd read only theorized about chaos chi. They didn't provide a manual. I had to find the path myself. The goal was simple: merge the 2 opposing forces into the original, primordial state of chaos. 30 minutes passed, then an hour. I tried dozens of times, but I got nowhere. The energies wouldn't mix. They interfered with each other, making my internal circulation sluggish and painful. I realized I needed a new approach. Maybe I should stagger them, one in front, one behind. I tried leading with yang and following with yin. Controlling 2 different flows at different speeds was exhausting. My head started to throb. I downed a pack of nutritional fluid to keep my energy up and dove back in. 2 hours later, I finally managed 1 full rotation with the staggered energies. Still, there was no sign of them merging. I figured it might just be a matter of repetition. I kept going as the sun began to set. By the time I was down to my last reserves of stored energy, I was slumped over my desk, surrounded by sheets of paper. I had recorded every attempt, every timing, and every failure. If a normal cultivator saw these notes, their skin would crawl. Every single method I recorded was a different form of suicide. I looked at the number at the bottom of the page, 71. If it weren't for my invincibility, I would have died 71 times today. I stared at the notes, lost in thought. I tried observation, I tried intervention, and nothing worked. Maybe chaos chi couldn't be formed through normal means. But I knew it existed. Archaeologists had found ancient corpses of masters whose bodies still hummed with a unique energy that could bridge the gap between yin and yang. Modern scholars had been stuck on this puzzle for decades. With no manuals left from the ancients, everything was guesswork. Some theorists believed chaos chi wasn't a natural state, but a product of something extreme. An extreme product, I whispered to myself. A spark of inspiration finally hit me. I remembered my trip to the library when I was searching for a technique for Zhu Tao. I had seen plenty of extreme cultivation methods back then. Modern techniques were mostly safe adaptations of ancient ways, but if I wanted to create chaos chi, I had to think like the ancients. I had to go to the extreme. I hopped online and started digging through restricted files. My eyes eventually landed on a method that most people would consider insane: chi collision. It was simple and suicidal. You took your yin and yang energies and ran them toward each other in opposite directions. You let them crash head-on inside your meridians. To anyone else, this was pure idiocy. To me, it was a brand new path. The violent collision would either force them to fuse or create something entirely new. I had to try it. I downed another bag of nutritional fluid to top off my energy and sat cross-legged. I spent 10 minutes carefully drawing out enough destructive yin energy from my dantian to perfectly match the yang energy of my everlasting body technique. Balance was key. Then, I let them rip. The two energies surged toward each other and collided instantly. I felt a massive shockwave. It felt like someone had shoved an air hose into my veins and started pumping. My meridians began to stretch and swell. It wasn't exactly painful, but it felt incredibly uncomfortable. Then it hit me. I wasn't just surviving. I was expanding my meridians. I almost laughed out loud. This was a massive shortcut. Expanding one's meridians was a prerequisite for becoming a true powerhouse, something usually reserved for 6th-grade martial sovereigns who could afford incredibly rare and expensive drugs. But here I was, a 9th-grade practitioner, doing it through sheer violence. The impact energy from the collision was carving out wider paths in my body. This only worked because I had my invincibility and access to the student's unique yin energy. Anyone else who tried this would have exploded into a red mist. I felt like I had hit the jackpot. I didn't even know how much of an advantage this would give me because there were no records of anyone doing this so early in their cultivation. I was officially in uncharted territory. The collisions continued inside me, over and over. Every swell was followed by a feeling of incredible clarity. It was like a single-lane road was being paved into a multi-lane highway. It felt amazing, but then the swelling stopped. I checked my internal state and realized the two clashing energies were starting to vanish. My heart skipped a beat. Had I crippled myself? Was the experiment failing? I focused harder, staring into my own spiritual sea. There, at the point of impact, a tiny cluster of gray energy appeared. It was hungry. It began devouring the remaining yin and yang energies, growing larger with every second. This was it. Chaos chi. I watched as it consumed everything I had, eventually settling into a steady flow through my newly widened meridians. I took a deep breath and tested it. I activated the second stage of my technique, bronze bone. I guided the chaos chi into my arms and slammed my fist onto my desk. A heavy thud echoed through the room. I lifted my hand to see deep cracks spiderwebbing across the solid wood. The chaos chi wasn't just compatible with my technique, it amplified the power significantly. It was a universal fuel. I wanted to celebrate, but a sudden, violent hunger hit me like a physical blow. I broke out in a cold sweat. My hands started shaking. I lunged for the fridge and grabbed a bag of nutritional fluid, tearing it open with my teeth. I finished it in one gulp. Then another, and another. I didn't stop until I had drained all 20 bags of my emergency stock. The hunger finally dulled to a dull ache. That's when I realized what had happened. During the chaos of the fusion, I had broken through the bottleneck of the 9th grade. I was now an 8th grade martial spirit. No wonder I was starving. My body had evolved in an instant. But even for an 8th grade breakthrough, this power was abnormal. The chaos chi was definitely boosting my foundations. I ran to the school cafeteria and ate enough to feed a small army. Once I was finally full, I headed back to my dorm to run the numbers. My new highway-sized meridians needed a lot of fuel to keep the chaos chi running. Even with my teacher's salary and food subsidies, I was going to be broke. Between my base pay and the homeroom teacher bonus, I was making about $8,000 a month. But at this rate, I'd be spending $300 or $400 a day just on food. My savings could carry me for a year, but I couldn't keep this up forever. I needed to get control of Class 5 soon, and I definitely needed to head back to my old school to get the third stage of the everlasting body technique. I had the power now, but keeping it fed was going to be my next big battle. I needed to find time to head back to my old school to get the third stage of the everlasting body technique. If I could break through to the 7th grade, I'd be qualified to become a beast hunter. That was my ticket out of poverty. I could spend my weekends doing part-time hunting jobs to earn some extra cash. As soon as I got back to my dorm, the first thing I did was destroy all my research notes. Every single scrap of paper related to my experiments went into the trash. If anyone else saw those notes, they'd think I was researching ways to commit suicide. I had managed to create chaos chi, but my method was useless to anyone else. To create it, you had to force two opposing energies to crash into each other hundreds of times. Statistically, you'd die on the first attempt. I was a freak accident. I still wasn't entirely sure how I survived. Maybe the original owner of this body had given up on life and tried to end it all, accidentally stumbling upon this power in his final moments. Writing a thesis on this was out of the question. It would be like a coffin salesman asking for a customer review. No one survives to give one. Still, looking at the brats in Class 5 didn't feel so bad anymore. My system allowed me to gain energy when they improved, but now that I had chaos chi, there was an added bonus. I could actually absorb the hidden force they projected during combat and convert it into my own power. The only problem was that they were still too weak. There wasn't much energy to harvest yet. Then there was the issue with Zhu Tao. Even though I was getting stronger, I still hadn't helped him make any real progress with his dual cultivation technique. I scratched my head, thinking, I wanted to transfer some of my chi into him, so he could have chaos chi too. If he had that, his growth would be explosive. But I knew that was impossible. Everyone's chi is unique, like a fingerprint. It has two main traits, uniqueness and exclusivity. Uniqueness means everyone's energy is different. Exclusivity means your body will only accept your own energy. If you try to use someone else's chi, your body treats it like a foreign invader and attacks it. Even though chaos chi is highly compatible, it still follows these rules. If it didn't, the world would be full of chaos chi masters by now. I had to find a way to help Zhu Tao get past the initial hurdle of dual cultivation. I decided to use my college connections. I reached out to some old alumni who had attempted dual cultivation to see how they were holding up. The responses came back quickly. Most of them were jokes. One guy told me dual cultivation was great because his hand speed was so fast he could outwork anyone on a factory assembly line. But once the joke stopped, the truth came out. Every single alumnus I talked to regretted choosing that path. In the early stages, dual cultivation gives you an edge because you have more tricks up your sleeve. But as time goes on, that advantage turns into a curse. You end up neglecting both paths. The result is always the same. Both techniques stall, and your progress hits a brick wall. Without strength or a powerful background, trying to make a living in this society is a pipe dream. However, I did manage to gather some actual insights. Most people found the compression method too difficult because it required insane levels of control. Instead, most dual cultivators used the differential speed method. This was exactly what I had been experimenting with, running two streams of chi through the meridians at different speeds so they never collided. The trick was finding the right rhythm. Since every technique is different, the timing for a full cycle varies. You have to constantly adjust the speeds as you get stronger to prevent a rear-end collision in your veins. I spent the night meticulously summarizing these findings, combining them with my own experimental data. The next morning, after training ended, I called Zhu Tao into my office. He walked in with that same arrogant posture, leaning against my desk like a political prisoner refusing to break. He still wouldn't even call me teacher. I didn't mind. Relationships take time. I pulled out the notebook I had prepared. Take this. What is it? Zhu Tao frowned, glancing at the notes. He snorted and pushed it back. I don't need this. I told you, I'm not doing that dual cultivation crap. I looked at him flatly. Do you think I'm blind? I know exactly what you're practicing. Stop being stubborn. Take it just in case. I kept my voice casual. If you ever change your mind, this will save your life. Don't say I never did anything for you. Zhu Tao lifted his chin, acting like he was doing me a favor. Fine. Since you're being so insistent, I'll take it. But I don't like owing people favors. He was clearly happy, but he refused to let his guard down. What's your price? I knew he expected me to say something sentimental, like, just study hard, or make me proud. Instead, I rattled off a list. A 3-story villa, a rooftop pool, a garden out front, and a convertible in the garage. Zhu Tao didn't blink. Fine. I'll burn paper versions of those for your funeral. I couldn't help but smirk. At least we had some teacher-student chemistry. With the notes in his hands, I felt a little less worried about him blowing himself up. I wasn't sure how much my notes would actually help Zhu Tao. The kid was stubborn. Even now, he refused to admit he was practicing the heaven-mending cloud technique. Since he wouldn't come clean, there wasn't much I could do to guide him directly. I knew he'd at least started the process, but I had no idea how far he'd progressed. I told myself to stay patient. It was a slow process. Besides, I had other things to worry about today. I needed to leave campus and head to the Donghai Martial Arts Association to get my rank officially certified. I had finally broken through to the 8th grade martial spirit realm. My first priority was simple: get a raise. If I got the paperwork filed before the end of the month, I might actually see that extra money in my next paycheck. I gathered my documents and headed straight to the office of my group leader, Lu Jun, to get a leave permit. Lu Jun took the slip of paper and froze. Xiao Su, you broke through? I gave him a modest smile. Just got lucky. I barely made it into the 8th grade. I'm heading out to get the certification now. Lu Jun beamed. This was great news for him. He had been stressing over the body-tempering liquid he'd promised me. Everyone knew I'd been stuck at 9th grade for years, so they assumed I needed that medicine to break the bottleneck. Now that I'd done it on my own, the pressure was off him. Xiao Su, I've been watching your work with the martial arts class, Lu Jun said, his voice full of sudden praise. I knew I wasn't wrong about you. I blinked, thinking to myself, wait, didn't I volunteer for this disaster class because no one else would? The leader has a sharp eye, I said out loud, playing along. I really value your ability, he continued. You're a rising star in the education world. I narrowed my eyes. Knowing Lu Jun, this sudden flattery meant he was up to something. You flatter me, leader. Don't worry, I'll keep working hard. I won't let you down. I kept my face serious. And I'm still determined to get that body-tempering liquid. Lu Jun's smile turned a bit dry. It's good to have confidence. I'm sure you'll earn it. So, can you sign the permit? Of course, of course. As soon as I walked out the door, I let out a cold snort. We'd worked together for 2.5 years. I knew his tricks. The body-tempering liquid was just a carrot he dangled in front of me, and he probably had no intention of actually delivering. Honestly, with my expanded meridians and chaos chi, I didn't even need it anymore. My cultivation speed was already off the charts. But I wasn't going to tell him that. I could still sell the stuff for a fortune. And if he couldn't deliver the medicine, I'd use it as leverage to squeeze other benefits out of him. Maybe I'd finally get that fancy marble desk from his office. I headed back to the classroom to grab my things. The students were their usual dismissive selves until I spoke up. I'm leaving campus for the afternoon. If you have questions about your training, wait until I get back. I turned to leave, but before I could take a step, the entire class swarmed the door. They blocked my path, their breathing heavy and their eyes wide with desperation. It looked like they wanted to eat me alive. I stumbled back 2 steps, startled. What are you doing? You're leaving the school? Zhu Tao asked, his voice uncharacteristically intense. I nodded slowly. Yeah, what? Zhu Tao straightened his collar, his arrogant facade crumbling just a tiny bit. Old Su, give me some face. Take me with you. I promise I won't cause trouble. Teacher Su, another student shouted. I'm sorry for being loud before. Please don't hold it against me. I'll literally bow to you right now if you just take me outside. The girl who usually carried a spiked club stepped forward, looking pained. I'll give you my club. Just let me go out and play for a day. I stood there stunned. The 3rd Martial Arts High School was a strictly closed campus. Students were only allowed out on major holidays or at the end of the month. The school was a city unto itself, supermarkets, cafeterias, even a full medical wing. You couldn't even fake being sick to leave. As for escaping, forget it. All 4 gates were guarded by 6th-grade martial sovereigns sent by the Kunlun authorities. Trying to sneak past a martial sovereign was a suicide mission. For these kids, school felt like a prison. They were dying for a glimpse of the outside world. I had never seen Class 5 act this humble. It made sense, though. There were no entertainment facilities here, and the dorms blocked cell signals most of the time. They were basically doing time. I didn't want to use this to bully them. That wasn't my style, but I realized this was a golden opportunity to build a real connection with them. Still, taking a student out was a massive liability. If they caused trouble, it was my head on the block. And this class was famous for trouble. I held up one finger. I can only take one person, and you have to promise not to make a scene. If you mess this up, I'm never taking any of you out again. The class immediately started rolling up their sleeves, eyes burning with competitive fire. It looked like they were about to have a battle royale. Stop. I rolled my eyes. To be fair, we're deciding this with rock, paper, scissors. An hour later, Li Yiming was walking behind me toward the gate. He looked incredibly nervous. You won the game, I said, looking back at him. Why do you look so miserable? How can I be happy? Li Yiming whispered, glancing back at the school buildings. I wanted to leave, but you didn't see the way the rest of the class looked at me when I won. I'm dead when I get back. He shook it off and hurried his pace. Whatever, let's just go. Old Sue, I haven't seen the outside world in 2 weeks. I can't wait. I blinked. He'd already dropped the formalities and started calling me Old Sue. The lure of freedom was a powerful thing. We reached the north gate, where an old man sat cross-legged with his eyes closed. He looked kind enough, but even from a distance, I could feel the suffocating pressure of his aura. That was the power of a 6th-grade martial sovereign. Elder Lu, I called out. The old man opened one eye, looking lazy. Xiao Su, what's up? He glanced at Li Yiming. The boy flinched, instinctively hiding behind my back. I handed over the permit. I'm heading out for the afternoon. Here's the slip from the group leader. Elder Lu swept his gaze over the permit and then let it rest on Li Yiming. The old man squinted, clearly recognizing the boy. He'd probably caught him trying to sneak out before. Li Yiming didn't say a word, but I could tell he was uncomfortable, probably feeling a phantom ache in his backside. The school guards knew exactly how to hit. They wouldn't cause permanent damage, but the pain would linger for a good 2 weeks. After the entire Class 5 got a taste of that discipline, none of them dared to skip school anymore. I knew their dark history and had to stifle a laugh. I'm taking him out to handle some business, I explained. MHM, stay safe, Elder Lu grunted. With me acting as a guarantor, he wasn't going to stand in our way. If anything happened outside the gates, it was on my head, not his. It didn't take long for Li Yiming to follow me into the bustling world outside. His eyes were glued to the streets, darting back and forth like a country bumpkin entering the city for the first time. I felt a bit bad for the kid. How long had they been cooped up to make him act like a caveman rediscovering fire? Holy crap, he suddenly blurted out. Look at that. So big, so white. Those legs are huge. She looks just like a lead actress from a movie I watched. Where? I asked, my eyes instinctively following his gaze. I caught myself a second later. Damn it. He almost dragged me right into the gutter with him. Is that all you kids think about? That's terrible. Now, tell me the name of that movie so I can go find it and criticize it properly. I cleared my throat, regaining my composure. Keep staring like that, and I'm sending you straight back to school. Outside these walls, you listen to me. Li Yiming immediately looked away and hurried to keep up. Where are we going, Old Sue? The Martial Arts Association. He blinked, confused. What for? Stop asking questions and just follow me. Grab a taxi. It's too far to walk, and we need to save time so we can look around later. Who said anything about walking? I countered. We're running. Consider it training consolidation. The truth was, I was being cheap. I wanted to save money wherever possible. The association wasn't that far, about 10 kilometers. For a martial artist, that was a 10-minute jog. We sprinted through the city, though I made sure we actually stopped for red lights. Soon, we were standing in front of the Donghai City Martial Arts Association's main hall. I'm going in to handle things, I told him. You stay here. Don't wander off. Wait for me, and I'll buy you an orange. Li Yiming just stared at me. The joke went right over his head. I sighed internally. Kid really needed to catch up on his literature. I told him to stay put and headed inside. I knew the place well since the school sent us here for annual checkups. I took a number and waited for my realm certification. The process was automated and simple, though the security check was strict to prevent any cheating. Outside, Li Yiming stretched his arms, breathing in the fresh air. The sky looked so much brighter than it did from behind the school walls. He watched me disappear into the hall and grinned. He didn't look like the type to sit still. He bolted toward a nearby milk tea shop. The school only served healthy stuff, and he'd been craving junk food for ages. "Welcome. What can I get you?" the clerk asked. "A bucket of lemon passion fruit. Ice, half sugar," he ordered. Then, in a rare moment of conscience, he decided to get one for me too. And another lemon passion fruit. Actually, hold the passion fruit, and add as much lemon as humanly possible. Make it lethal. When I finally walked out of the hall, I was surprised to see Li Yiming actually waiting for me in a nearby pavilion. I figured he would have vanished the second I turned my back. "You didn't run off?" I asked. "Of course not. I just want to grab a drink. Here, I got you a lemon passion fruit juice. Drink it while it's fresh." He handed it over with a look that was a little too eager. "You're smiling like you've got a secret," I noted. "Teacher, how could you doubt my sincerity?" "Fine, I'll take it." I wasn't worried about him poisoning me. I took a sip. It tasted like nothing, just cold water. I was thirsty, so I downed half the cup in one go. Li Yiming stared at me, his jaw dropping. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. He had personally asked for extra concentrated lemon powder, the kind of sour that should have turned my face inside out. "Teacher, you don't feel anything?" I gave him a knowing smirk. "Like what?" "Nothing, never mind." "All right, my business is done." I stood up. It was rare for me to be out, and the sun was still high. "Got any ideas for what to do next?" Li Yiming immediately forgot about the failed lemon prank. "Let's go to the movies." I twitched. If I was going to a movie, I wanted to go with a beautiful female martial artist, not a teenage boy. But seeing his excitement, I gave in. "Fine, but only if you finish the rest of that lemon drink." I didn't know exactly what he'd put in it, but it was definitely weird. Whatever it was, my invincible protector system had flagged it as an attack and neutralized the flavor entirely. Li Yiming looked like he'd been struck by lightning, but I let him off the hook. "Don't try those little tricks again." He laughed nervously, completely baffled. Was my cultivation really so high that I could dissolve sourness itself? There was a cinema nearby. As we walked, Li Yiming kept rambling about how amazing this specific movie was. I found it funny. This wasn't how I pictured a rich delinquent acting. I expected him to want something flashy, like a pool party with models. Then I remembered, he was a minor. I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I should have become a university professor instead. I was missing out on the high-end social life. Still, it was nice to see he was relatively simple-minded. I figured a movie was a small price to pay to build a better relationship with my student. But when I saw the price for a duo ticket set, my heart ached. I almost wished he was short enough to qualify for a child's discount. We hadn't even reached the theater when Li Yiming froze. His attention was snatched by a high-tech storefront nearby. I looked up and saw displays filled with reinforced mechanical exoskeletons, all bearing a large Yinxing logo. Yinxing Tech was the rising star of high-tech gear, famous for their adaptive exoskeleton suits. A single set started at over $1 million. Their main customers were beast hunters who needed the extra protection and power. "Old Sue, let's go check it out." "What about the movie?" I asked, annoyed. Kids are so easily distracted. "I just bought the tickets." "The movie hasn't started yet. I want to see the new Yinxing gear." Fine. I could always refund the tickets before the showtime." I followed him into the store. It was my first time inside a Yinxing shop. I simply couldn't afford their stuff. Li Yiming, however, walked in like he owned the place, though he bypassed the standard models like they were boring toys. He didn't stop at the display cases. Instead, he headed straight for the closed testing arena at the back of the store and called for the manager. I was surprised by his confidence. When the manager saw Li Yiming, his attitude shifted instantly. He became incredibly polite, bowing slightly. "Young Master Li, it's been a long time," the manager said. Li Yiming gave a small nod, looking bored. "I'm here to test the new gear." "Of course. I'll arrange it immediately. Please wait just a moment." The manager scurried off to prepare the session. I leaned closer to Li Yiming, my curiosity getting the better of me. What kind of new gear? An automated combat exoskeleton, Li Yiming whispered. It hasn't even hit the market yet. It's still in the closed beta phase. I spent a fortune just to get a spot in this test. I blinked. Automated combat. Li Yiming grinned at me. Yeah. The smart chip inside the exoskeleton is loaded with combat data from elite martial arts masters. Even a rank 9 martial artist can easily exert the power of a rank 7 martial mystery realm expert while wearing it. It can even get close to the combat capability of a rank 6 martial sovereign. I was stunned. Then a set like that must cost tens of millions, right? Probably more, Li Yiming said, though his excitement faded slightly. My family won't let me buy one. To them, this stuff is just a toy. I stayed silent. I thought he meant he couldn't afford it because it was expensive, but no, his family just thought it was useless. The poor rely on mutations, the rich rely on technology. Still, I had a traditional mindset. External gear was just a crutch that created dependency. If you wanted to be strong, you had to forge your own body. Since the equipment was in a closed beta, I wasn't allowed inside without authorization. I had to stay in the waiting area while Li Yiming followed the staff into the testing hall. He signed a liability waiver, acknowledging that the gear was still in development and that the Yunqing company would only bear secondary responsibility if an accident occurred. Soon, Li Yiming was suited up. Adaptive exoskeletons were Yunqing's specialty. Once he put it on, the suit automatically adjusted to his frame. It looked sleek and futuristic, made of high nanocarbon fiber composites. It was lightweight but offered top-tier protection. Li Yiming moved around, testing his range of motion. Once he was satisfied, he activated the automated combat mode. A swarm of high-speed attack drones took flight, buzzing toward him like angry hornets. Li Yiming's body blurred. He dodged and countered with such speed that I would have only seen after images if I were inside. This is amazing, Li Yiming shouted from inside the hall. With the bio-antimatter energy cells powering the suit, his combat power had spiked to an insane level. He felt like he had a martial sovereign trial card. His only regret was that I wasn't in there for him to beat up. Half an hour passed. Li Yiming was still lost in the thrill of the fight. I wasn't bored, though. Because I was with a VIP, the staff brought me drinks, a fruit plate, and even let me use a high-end automated massage pod. My muscles were still sore from the Martial Arts Association test, so I took full advantage of it. I pulled my rank certification report out of my bag. Seeing the rank 8 martial spirit stamp made me beam with pride. The small salary bump was nice, but the real prize was that I finally qualified to apply for the Excellent Teacher of the Year award. In the past, I wouldn't have dared to dream of it. But now, I was ambitious. If I won the Donghai City title, the government would reward me with a luxury apartment. With current real estate prices, it was worth at least 6 million yuan. The competition was fierce. I'd be up against every teacher in the city for one of only 10 spots, but I had the system. To win, I needed 2 things: personal performance and class performance. They were linked. I couldn't just be strong. My students had to excel too. They needed to get into top universities or make major contributions. With a rank 8 base and my system's help, I felt that apartment was already mine. I was busy imagining what furniture to buy when the store suddenly got noisy. I climbed out of the massage pod and saw 3 members of the Kunlun patrol team rushing in. They started evacuating everyone. The manager looked pale as he spoke to the officers. He immediately led them toward the testing hall. "Sir, I'm sorry, there's been an accident," a staff member said, rushing to my side. "We need to evacuate the building immediately." "What happened?" I asked, my heart sinking. "My student is still in there. We don't know the details yet. It's dangerous. The patrol team will handle it. Please, leave now." I was ushered out of the store. Outside, the entire Yunqing shop was being cordoned off with yellow tape. A crowd had already gathered, whispering in hushed, worried tones. I waited, but Li Yiming didn't come out. I grabbed a middle-aged man nearby who looked like he knew something. "Brother, what's going on? Is it a beast attack?" "Not a beast," the man said, looking at his phone. "Haven't you seen the news? Yunqing Group's servers were hacked. Across the country, all the gear currently being tested has gone rogue. The systems are out of control. My eyes widened. Hacked again. I didn't care about corporate sabotage or business rivals. I only knew that Li Yiming was inside, locked in a suit that was now being controlled by someone else. If it's out of control, what happens to the person inside? I asked, my voice trembling. The man just shook his head. Nobody knows. I knew this situation was going to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be this disastrous. My face darkened, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. Inside the sealed testing hall, chaos had taken over. Why won't it stop? Get out of the way. Li Yiming screamed. The hall was littered with the wreckage of destroyed drones. Li Yiming looked terrified. His body was moving, but he wasn't the one controlling it. The automatic combat exoskeleton had gone completely rogue, turning into a killing machine that was now hunting down the staff members. The technicians were in a blind panic. They tried to cut the network connection, but the suit wouldn't respond. They were desperately trying to lure the machine into the center of the room. If that thing broke out of the testing hall, it would view everyone in the building as an enemy. It would be a bloodbath. Li Yiming was trapped. He couldn't override the program, and the manual emergency release was jammed. He pressed the button over and over, but nothing happened. In his panic, he lunged toward a staff member who couldn't dodge in time. The man raised his own exoskeleton arm to block, but Li Yiming's suit delivered a punch so powerful it sent the man flying. Blood splattered across the floor. Before the man hit the wall, a shadow blurred past. A hand reached out and caught the falling technician midair. Everyone evacuate. The Kunlun patrol team is taking over, a woman shouted. She was one of the 3 officers who had just rushed in. The Yunqing servers were hit by a virus. The code has been rewritten. It's an indiscriminate attack mode. The staff didn't need to be told twice. They scrambled for the exits. Li Yiming's suit pivoted to chase them, but suddenly, he stopped dead. A massive, burly patrolman had lunged forward, grabbing both of the exoskeleton's arms with his bare hands. The officer's raw strength was incredible, forcing the machine into a temporary stalemate. Ow! Stop! It hurts! Li Yiming shrieked. The suit's mechanical arms were clamped tight against his own limbs. The pressure was crushing his bones. The burly officer winced and instinctively loosened his grip to avoid breaking the boy's arms. In that split second of hesitation, Li Yiming's suit swung a heavy fist and sent the giant officer flying backward. I'm sorry. It's not me. Li Yiming cried, his voice cracking. I can't control my body. He blurred forward again, appearing right in front of the fallen officer. He brought a fist down like a sledgehammer. The officer rolled and caught the blow with both hands, the impact so violent that the reinforced floor beneath them shattered into a web of cracks. Hurry up and get this kid out of the suit, the officer grunted through grit teeth. I can't fight back like this. I can't, the woman shouted back. The program is locked. We have to destroy the machine without killing the boy. What about the power source? It's an antimatter energy rod. If we rupture it, the explosion will vaporize him. Li Yiming looked like he was about to lose his mind. Help me. I don't want to die. The female officer tried to stay calm. Don't be scared, kid. We'll hold it off. Try to use your own strength to resist the suit's movements. I'm trying my best, but it won't stop. The burly officer was forced into a deadly game of tag, sprinting around the hall with a sobbing Li Yiming hot on his heels. The officer was furious. He couldn't strike back because one full-strength blow would turn the student into paste. All they could do was buy time. The 3 officers looked grim. They had fought monsters and terrorists, but this was a nightmare. If they didn't find a way to stop it, Li Yiming was dead. Suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos from the entrance. Let me do it. Everyone turned toward the door. I was already sprinting toward the center of the hall. Before I could get far, the tall, thin officer blocked my path. Who are you? He demanded. I'm his teacher, I said, breathing hard. I can help. The tall officer looked me up and down, his expression turning to disbelief. A rank 5? No, wait, you're just a rank 8 martial spirit. He rolled his eyes. Get out of here. Stop causing trouble. This machine is as strong as a rank 5 martial lord. It'll punch your brains out. In the middle of the room, Li Yiming saw me and let out a desperate yell. Old Su, save me. My teacher has the immovable stance. He has force redirection. He can stop it. The 3 patrol members froze. Immovable stance. Force redirection? Those were high-level techniques that only a martial king could master. It sounded like a joke. The female officer, Qin Yao, blurred to my side. Her face was full of suspicion. You know force redirection? I had to commit. I nodded, even though I couldn't explain how I had it. Yes. The tall officer glanced at me, his eyes full of doubt. Qin Yao hesitated for a second. The world is full of wonders. I'll believe it. But to make sure you don't die, I need to test your technique first. I'm Qin Yao, a rank 6 martial lord. My heart skipped a beat. A rank 6? One slap from her would send me to the afterlife. As she gathered her energy to strike me, I didn't wait. I bolted past her toward the fight. No time for tests. Just watch. Qin Yao froze, her hand still raised. She exchanged a look with the tall officer. If I was brave enough to run toward that thing, I must have a plan. They didn't chase me. I reached the center of the hall and shouted at the burly officer. Lead him to me. You really know force redirection? He yelled back. Just bring him here. Fine. The burly man shifted his weight and moved like an arrow, leading the rampaging suit straight toward me. Get back, I barked. I planted my feet and stepped forward. A dark shadow loomed over me. The exoskeleton-clad fist tore through the air, creating a sonic pop as it slammed into my shoulder. There was no explosion, no sound of breaking bones. I didn't even budge. I stood my ground, reached out, and grabbed the exoskeleton's arms. Old Sue, you're finally here. Li Yiming sobbed. The suit groaned, straining against my grip, but it couldn't move an inch. The feeling of total powerlessness from the machine made Li Yiming wail with relief. I love you, man. The burly officer stood behind me, completely stunned. He rubbed his head, staring at me for a long time before he managed to choke out 2 words. Holy crap. Qin Yao and the tall officer rushed over. Seeing the high-tech killing machine neutralized by my bare hands made their skin crawl. There really were hidden masters in this world. Who would have thought a rank 8 kid could actually use a martial king's redirection technique? It was absurd. Brother, that was incredible, the tall officer muttered. Li Yiming, still crying, managed to brag through his tears. Of course, my teacher's redirection is so good he can even redirect the sourness out of a concentrated lemon. I narrowed my eyes at him. So the little brat really did spike my water. I'd deal with him once we got home. I looked at the 3 officers. Can't this thing be deactivated? I asked, looking down at Li Yiming's hands. They were still twitching violently. It was clear the exoskeleton was fighting my grip, trying to regain control. Suddenly, the burly officer behind me let out a deafening roar. Watch out below. I reacted on instinct and looked down. My heart nearly stopped. Li Yiming's leg swung up in a brutal, heavy kick aimed straight for my crotch. Every man in the room winced, their skin crawling at the sight. Old Sue, it wasn't me, Li Yiming wailed. The suit did it. It kicked you on its own. Hey, brother, you okay? The tall officer asked, his voice trembling. I didn't say a word. Cold sweat soaked my back. Thank God for my invincible teacher status. If not for that system protection, that one kick would have ended my family line right then and there. I thought this exoskeleton was supposed to be programmed with data from martial arts masters. What kind of master fights by aiming for the groin? Maybe the machine was just frustrated because it couldn't break my grip. It can't be taken off, Qin Yao added quickly. This model is integrated. There are no release points. We'd have to destroy it to get him out. I looked at the metal plating covering most of Li Yiming's body. If we forcibly broke the suit, the kid would probably end up with every bone in his body shattered. Li Yiming's face went pale with terror. Then I'm dead. I'm a goner. There's one other way, Qin Yao said. We wait for the Yunxin group to crack the virus and reset the system. We just don't know how long that will take. I let out a long breath. At least there was a solution. Fine. We wait for the reset then. But I wasn't just going to stand there. I swept my leg out in a lightning-fast strike, tripping Li Yiming and slamming him onto the floor. The high-tech exoskeleton was useless against my move. Qin Yao and the 2 officers watched in stunned silence. To them, my redirection technique was reaching legendary levels. Li Yiming groaned as his head hit the floor. Old Sue, you're doing this for revenge, aren't you? Nonsense, I said, keeping a straight face. I'm not that petty. I'm just pinning you down so you don't hurt anyone else. I held him there, pinned to the ground. He couldn't budge an inch. The patrol trio looked like they were questioning reality. I wasn't even breathing hard. The tall officer, Jiang Fan, leaned in. "Brother, what's your name? Where do you work?" "Su Yang. I'm a teacher at the 3rd Martial Arts High School." Jiang Fan hesitated for a second, then blurted out, "The patrol team needs masters like you. Being a teacher doesn't pay nearly as well as we do. With your skills, you don't even need to take the exam. We can special recruit you right now. Come to my 7th squad. I'll step down and let you be the captain. I'll even be your assistant." Qin Yao's pretty face filled with shock. If he's going anywhere, he's coming to my 6th squad. Being a regular member would be a waste of his talent, especially since he's only a rank 8 martial soul. His growth potential is insane. The burly man, Lu Hai, looked at me with total sincerity. "Su Yang, you really should consider it. Staying a teacher with your skills is a waste of a God-given gift. You don't have to join my 5th squad as a captain. I'll talk to the bureau chief. I'll tell him to retire so you can take his job." I felt a massive surge of excitement. If I actually had the skills they thought I had, I'd quit my job in a heartbeat to become the big boss of the Kunlun Law Enforcement Bureau. I was surprised these 3 were all captains. I thought they were just squad members, but it made sense given how dangerous this rogue exoskeleton was. In the Kunlun patrol hierarchy, you had the members, then captains, then the general captain, and finally the bureau chief. Captains were usually at least rank 6 martial lords. Their combat power was meant to suppress monsters and high-level threats. "I'm sorry," I said with a smile. "I prefer being a teacher." "Everyone has their own path," Lu Hai said, though he didn't give up. "But you could always work part-time." "Exactly," Jiang Fan chimed in. "With your redirection ability, you wouldn't even need to go on patrols. Just put your name on the roster. You get the salary and the bonuses. We'd only call you if we hit a situation we couldn't handle." Qin Yao nodded. "Su Yang, think about it. The benefits are great. With your ability, your starting pay would be the same as ours." I wanted to say yes so badly, but I knew the truth. I was a fraud. "Stop, please. I'd love to go, but I really can't. I have personal reasons." The 3 captains looked curious. "What kind of reasons? Maybe we can help." I thought about my class of delinquents. Part of me wanted to tell them to throw Class 5 into a dark cell for a few days to scare some sense into them. "It's just something I have to deal with," I said. "Maybe one day when it's resolved, I'll try out for the patrol team." "Don't make it so complicated," Lu Hai said, pulling out his phone. "Take my number. When you change your mind, call me. Direct recruitment." "Add me too." Jiang Fan shoved his phone forward. "Don't go to the 5th squad. It's all muscleheads over there. No women. You'll go crazy. Come to the 7th squad. We have the best people." Qin Yao spoke up calmly. "I lead the female squad. Most of them are single and looking for a partner." Lu Hai and Jiang Fan froze. That was a low blow. I didn't hesitate. I pulled out my phone and added Qin Yao immediately. "Captain Qin, let's stay in touch." "Of course," she replied. I wasn't a fool. I added the other 2 as well. You can never have too many connections, and if I ever got the chance to moonlight for the patrol team, I wasn't going to pass it up. "Su Yang," Lu Hai asked, still looking at me with awe. "How did you train your redirection to such a level?" Qin Yao rolled her eyes. "Don't you think that's a bit rude to ask?" "Right, my bad," Jiang Fan said. Then he looked at me. "Teacher Su, is your school still taking students? Do you accept transfers? I'll sign up tomorrow." He then turned to the pinned-down student. "And what's your name, classmate?" Li Yiming," the kid stammered. "Nice to meet you, Brother Ming. Please look after me in the future." Li Yiming looked completely dazed. These were 3 rank 6 captains, the backbone of our city's defense. Why were they being so polite to old Su? Why were they begging him to join them? Li Yiming had never paid attention in his martial arts theory classes, but even he was starting to realize that redirection was a lot bigger than he thought. The tension finally broke when word came through. The engineers at Yunxin Group had cracked the virus within 25 minutes. They pushed a patch through the network immediately. The exoskeleton finally powered down and released its grip. Luckily, because the company had called for Kunlun intervention early, no one had died. There were injuries, but the tragedy was contained. As the suit hissed open, the Yunxin Group issued a massive public apology, but all I cared about was that I had survived another day with my secrets intact. The company suspended all exoskeleton testing immediately. They needed to upgrade their systems and figure out where the virus came from, whether it was business rivals, foreign spies, or some crazy cult. I didn't care about any of that. I just hitched a ride back to school with the patrol team. Li Yiming sat beside me, still looking dazed, his movie plans completely forgotten after the chaos we'd just survived. The three captains promised to keep my performance a secret. They knew that if the word got out, every major corporation in the country would be trying to kidnap me. A man who could redirect force with that much precision was a gold mine, especially for groups researching high-level beasts. But I had my own reasons for staying quiet. I didn't want fame. If people thought I was some legendary master, every martial arts fanatic in the city would show up to challenge me. I wanted to teach my class, not get beaten to death in a duel. Back at the patrol headquarters, the captains reported to the director. He was thrilled. He'd heard about exoskeleton malfunctions in other cities that ended in tragedy, yet his team had suppressed the suit without a single injury. It wasn't us, Director, Qin Yao said, stepping forward. It was a teacher from the 3rd Martial Arts High School. She was with us when the suit went rogue. The director frowned, thinking she was joking. He knew the faculty at that school. The strongest among them was barely a semi-pro. What could a teacher possibly do? He knows redirection, Lu Hai added. The director froze. He stared at them, convinced he had misheard. Say that again? Redirection, Lu Hai repeated. The director's face went pale. He slumped back into his chair, looking every bit his age. He muttered something about needing a hearing aid, convinced his ears were failing him. But the captains didn't blink. They described how I had pinned the exoskeleton down single-handedly, rendering it completely immobile. Silence filled the office. Mastering redirection as a rank 8 martial spirit wasn't impossible, but it required an insane level of martial comprehension. The director pulled up my file, looking for answers. What he found only confused him more. My record was mediocre. It had taken me 18 years just to reach rank 9. By the time I finished university, I was barely at the peak of that level. I understand now, the director whispered, his eyes widening with realization. This young man has incredible willpower. The captains looked at him, confused. It's simple, the director sighed, his voice full of respect. He didn't neglect his training because he lacked talent. He spent 20 years ignoring raw power so he could focus entirely on mastering redirection. Can you imagine the dedication that takes? To let your peers surpass you while you chase a technique most people never even see. The captains stood in stunned silence. Their respect for me shot through the roof. They pictured me enduring years of ridicule and mockery, all while quietly mastering the ultimate defense. To them, I wasn't just a teacher anymore. I was a humble hero who had rejected their job offers to stay at a low-tier school and shape the next generation. I had no idea they were turning me into a saint. At that exact moment, I was walking out of the school's administrative office feeling like I'd won the lottery. I had just secured a 500 yuan monthly raise. If I played my cards right and stayed long enough to get a senior title, I could be making 10,000 a month. I tried to calm myself down. I was supposed to be a future martial god. I couldn't let a tiny raise ruin my stoic composure. When I walked back into the classroom, the atmosphere had changed. The delinquents in Class 5 didn't look at me with their usual spite. Li Yiming must have told them what happened. Listen up, I said, leaning against my desk. About that redirection thing, don't go spreading it around. Keep your mouth shut. I decided to stop pretending I was weak, since they already saw through it. Why should we? One of them challenged. Because, I said, acting like I was thinking it over. I was going to organize a field trip for us this month. But if word gets out, I might have to cancel it. The class went silent. Then, they all looked at each other and started acting like they had amnesia. Redirection? What's that? Did the teacher say something? I didn't hear anything. I hid a smile. It was a good start for building a relationship with these kids. I thought about the field trip, but I knew I couldn't take them to another school. These brats didn't know their own strength. If I let them spar with normal students, they'd end up putting half the city in the hospital. Talking to them about actual martial arts theory was still like playing a lute to a cow, but at least they were finally listening. I realized quickly that nobody was actually listening to my lecture. Talking to these kids about martial arts theory was like playing a lute to a cow. I decided I needed a different approach. If I wanted to manage a martial arts class, I had to build a real relationship with them first. Besides, after spending a few days with them, I realized they weren't actually bad kids at heart. I went to sit down at my desk, but the second my butt touched the chair, I felt something hard and sharp. It was incredibly uncomfortable. I stood up and ripped the cushion off the seat. Hidden underneath was a board covered in steel nails, their sharp points glinting at me. I sighed and slapped the cushion back down. I took back what I said about them being good kids. These little brats needed a serious reality check from society. Don't bother with these petty tricks next time, I said, sitting down anyway. It's boring. The students looked visibly disappointed that I hadn't ended up with a backside full of holes. I scanned the room, watching their reactions, but my eyes settled on Zhu Tao. He seemed distracted. He kept glancing around the room as if he were looking for something, but his vitals and stats didn't show anything unusual. I had already given him the summary for the dual cultivation method. I wondered if he had actually read it. Knowing his arrogant personality, he was definitely studying it in secret. Whether it was working or not remained to be seen. I wasn't the only one who noticed he was acting strange. The rest of Class 5 saw it too. Ever since he'd come to class that morning, he'd been completely out of it. They asked him what was wrong, but he just insisted he was fine. Since he wouldn't talk, they eventually gave up and left him alone. Night fell, and the gang gathered in Li Yiming's room to play games like they always did. Li Yiming looked around and realized Zhu Tao was missing again. That made 3 nights in a row that he'd locked himself in his room. They all wondered what kind of special training I had assigned him. Meanwhile, a dark shadow was creeping through the school building. It slipped into the Class 5 classroom and made sure the coast was clear. The figure pulled out a phone, clicked on the flashlight, and produced a small sewing kit. He walked straight to the window curtains. These holes are driving me crazy, Zhu Tao whispered to himself. I have to fix them. Curtains in a martial arts school take a beating. Between the stray wooden swords and accidental chi blasts, they're usually full of holes. Usually, Zhu Tao wouldn't have cared, but ever since he started practicing the heaven-mending cloud embroidery needle technique, seeing a tear in fabric made his skin crawl. He had an overwhelming urge to stitch them up. He knew how embarrassing it would be if the class or I found out he was into needlework. He'd be the laughingstock of the school. So, he waited until the middle of the night to sneak in and start his repairs. It was strange. When he practiced his family's coiling dragon god punch, he could never stay calm. He always felt frustrated or irritated. But with the needle technique, he felt a profound sense of peace. He got lost in the rhythm of the thread dancing between his fingers. There was a deep satisfaction in watching a tear vanish under his hand. The most incredible part was that every time he finished a stitch, he felt his internal energy grow. His technique was becoming fluid. At first, he was clumsy, but now the needle moved through the fabric like a living thing. He was addicted to the feeling. Bathed in the dim light of his phone, Zhu Tao fell into a trance-like state. His speed increased. Without even thinking, he pinched a steel needle between his thumb and forefinger and flicked it. The needle trailed the thread through the cloth, and with another flick, it zipped back through the other side. His strength was perfectly controlled. When he realized the tear was gone, he caught the returning needle between 2 fingers and snapped out of it. Wait, what just happened? He muttered, his heart racing. I was so focused I didn't even realize. Did I just pull off a secret move? Excited, he tried to replicate the flick. He snapped his fingers to launch the needle and tried to catch it on the rebound. Ow! He hissed in pain and slowly pulled the needle out of his own finger. He tried a few more times before giving up. It was too hard on his hands. He realized he couldn't force it. It had to come naturally. He decided to stop showing off and just focus on finishing the curtains. Suddenly, a cold, gravelly voice spoke from right behind him. That needle technique is quite something. Zhu Tao jumped like a startled cat. His skin crawled with goosebumps. He tried to bolt, but a pair of hands landed on his shoulders. There was no visible force, yet Zhu Tao felt like a mountain had dropped on him. He couldn't move an inch. He turned his head slowly and saw a wrinkled face illuminated by the faint light. He recognized him instantly. It was old Lu, the school gatekeeper, the same man who had caught him trying to climb the wall to cut class a few weeks ago. Zhu Tao's but still ached just looking at him. Grandpa, you scared the life out of me. Zhu Tao gasped. You didn't make a sound. You were so focused on your sewing, I didn't want to disturb you, old Lu said calmly. Why didn't you turn on the lights? I thought you were a thief. Zhu Tao's mind raced for an excuse. I was practicing my night vision. Old Lu didn't push it, but he looked puzzled. If I remember correctly, you practiced the coiling dragon god punch. I remember the shock you tried to give me when you tried to climb that wall. Zhu Tao winced. He had tried to blast the old man with his family's signature move that day, only to end up face down in the dirt. Yes, sir. That's me. Then why are you practicing this needle technique? It's a dual cultivation method, Zhu Tao stammered. Old Lu paused, then snorted. Nonsense. I've guarded this school for years, and I've rarely seen a student with worse natural talent than yours. You can't even wrap your head around a punch, yet you want to practice 2 paths at once? Hey, don't keep rubbing it in, Zhu Tao muttered with a dry laugh. My teacher told me to do it. He said I'm a once-in-a-10,000-years genius with the needle. Old Lu's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping with displeasure. Who is this teacher of yours? Who is leading you astray? It's Su Yuan. Su Yuan. Old Lu growled. What a joke. I'm going to find that boy right now and ask him what he thinks he's playing at. Zhu Tao's face went pale. The gatekeepers held a special status in these schools. Even the principal treated them with extreme respect. Usually, they stayed out of school business, but if old Lu decided to intervene, I was in serious trouble. If old Lu got angry, things would get ugly. Even the principal couldn't stop him. I could be fired on the spot. Zhu Tao actually liked me a little now, or at least, he didn't think I was a total fraud anymore. He looked at the old gatekeeper and realized he had to speak up. Grandpa, wait. Let me explain. Old Lu stopped and looked back, eyes full of doubt. What now? I don't think Teacher Su is leading me astray, Zhu Tao said quickly. I'm actually suited for needle techniques. I've been practicing the heaven-mending cloud needle. It only took me 4 hours to reach the entry level. Old Lu snorted with pure disdain. Nonsense. You think you're some once-in-a-thousand-years martial arts prodigy? Look at yourself. For hours to reach entry level? With your talent, it's more likely you'll be 6 feet under in 4 hours. The old man's words were like needles themselves, sharp and painful. Zhu Tao wanted to punch him, but he kept his cool. I'm serious. I've already reached the minor achievement stage. Old Lu glanced at Zhu Tao's fingers, which were covered in tiny nicks and cuts. Oh really? Just some accidents, Zhu Tao muttered. No pain, no gain in martial arts, right? Old Lu was surprised. He had guarded this school for years and knew exactly how the delinquents in Class 5 acted. They were the type to climb walls, skip class, and talk back to elders. He had never seen them respect a teacher, let alone defend one. It seemed these kids had finally found someone who clicked with them. Even if this dual cultivation idea was a bit reckless, old Lu figured it was their choice. If Zhu Tao didn't want to do it, no one could force him anyway. He let out a long breath. Fine. If it's your choice, I'll stay out of it. Thank you, Grandpa. Zhu Tao exhaled, feeling like a weight had been lifted. He thought to himself that I owed him a massive favor. If he hadn't stepped in, my career would have been over. The next morning, before the sun was even up, I ran into old Lu on my way to class. I greeted him with a respectful bow, expecting a friendly nod. Instead, the old man just let out a cold huff and walked away with his hands behind his back. I stood there, frozen. The teacher walking with me was just as confused. Xiao Su, did you do something to piss off old Lu? How could I asked, scratching my head. Maybe he's just going through male menopause. I couldn't figure out why he was acting like that, so I just pushed it to the back of my mind. When I got to the classroom, I saw Class 5 doing their morning drills. I didn't want to disturb them, so I headed to my office to focus on my own cultivation. My 9 refinement horizontal body technique was stuck at the second layer, the bronze bone stage. Progress had been agonizingly slow. I wished the system could show my own compatibility stats, but I didn't have that luxury. However, since I had expanded my meridians and cultivated chaos chi, I could feel my speed picking up. A quick session last night had felt like a week's worth of progress. The bronze bone stage was about coating the surface of every bone in the body with energy to increase density and defense. Before, it took me weeks just to coat a single finger bone. But with chaos chi, I finished my pinky finger in just 30 minutes. I decided to test it. I jabbed my fingers into a 2 centimeter thick wooden board. My normal fingers could barely pierce 2 layers. My pinky. It went through 3 layers like they were wet paper. If it wasn't so short, I bet it could have gone through 5. I realized I needed to redo my entire bronze bone stage using chaos chi. It was the only way to maximize my strength. But there was a problem. This kind of cultivation drained my energy and stamina like a black hole. After finishing just my right hand, a wave of intense hunger hit me. I sprinted to the small fridge in the office and downed every bottle of nutrition fluid I had. Chaos Chi was amazing, but it was expensive. I did the math. 1 bag of nutrition fluid cost about $100 after the teacher's discount. Finishing one hand cost me $1,200. My heart skipped a beat. A full-body coating would cost tens of thousands. I'd been working for 2.5 years and only saved up $100,000. If I kept this up, I'd be broke in a month. I needed more money. I thought about moonlighting with the patrol teams, but my skills were still mostly a bluff. If I got caught in a real fight, they'd probably arrest me for fraud. Being a beast hunter was an option, but the barrier for entry was high. Most major corporations required a 7th-grade mysterious realm cultivation. Even if I qualified, those missions took weeks. I couldn't just leave the school. That left me with one option: freeloading off my students. When they improved, the system rewarded me. I looked toward Class 5's room. They were like a herd of fat sheep just waiting to be sheared. Their families were loaded. They didn't care about the cost of nutrition fluids. Of course, as a teacher, I had principles. I wouldn't steal from them. I'd just help them succeed so I could reap the benefits. It was a win-win. Zhu Tao had been quiet for the past 2 days. He was probably stuck trying to balance 2 different cultivation paths. He was too proud to tell me his progress, so I decided not to put all my eggs in one basket. I needed a second project. Li Yiming was the next best candidate. After the whole incident where his external bone went out of control, he was much more cooperative. While the class finished their morning meditation, I headed to the library to find a technique that actually fit him. Back in the classroom, Zhu Tao was sitting cross-legged, sweating. He was trying to follow the dual cultivation method I gave him. It was a nightmare. Every time he tried to compress his family's aggressive coiling dragon chi into his dantian, it felt like his gut was being put through a meat grinder. The heaven-mending needle energy was easy to control. It was gentle and obedient. But the coiling dragon chi? It was a rebel. Every time he tried to guide it, it kicked back, threatening to spiral out of control. He had never really mastered that violent energy to begin with, and now it was fighting him every step of the way. I watched as the gentle heaven-mending energy began to circulate through Zhu Tao's meridians on its own. Now came the hard part. He had to guide his family's aggressive chi out of his dantian and try the differential speed method I'd taught him. It was like merging 2 cars onto a highway at different speeds. If he timed it wrong, they'd rear-end each other. He tried a few times, but the timing was a disaster. The internal collisions made his blood boil, and his face turned a deep, angry red. By the time the rest of Class 5 finished their morning meditation and stretched their limbs, they opened their eyes to a terrifying sight. Zhu Tao was sitting there, his face turning from bright red to a dark, sickly purple. The students looked at each other in shock. One of them whispered, "What's wrong with Tao? Did he fall asleep, or is he dying? His face looks like a bruised plum." They were panicked, but nobody dared to touch him. If they woke him up mid-cultivation, it could trigger a total internal collapse. "Where's that guy Sue?" someone yelled. "Go to the office and get him." Li Yiming sprinted to my office and hammered on the door, but I wasn't there. He ran back to the classroom, panting. "He's gone. The one time we actually need him, he's nowhere to be found. Call him. Someone call him now." They all reached for their phones, then froze. Nobody had my number. "I have it," Li Yiming shouted, quickly dialing. I was deep in the library, scouring the shelves for a new manual, when my phone buzzed. I saw Li Yiming's name and stepped outside to answer. "What's up?" "Teacher, it's Zhu Tao. He won't wake up and his face is purple." "Like dark purple." "Purple?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Is it the kind of purple you get when your parents beat you?" I knew the differential speed method caused blood flow issues during the adjustment phase. Turning purple was actually a sign it was working, even if it looked gruesome. "My parents have never beaten me," Li Yiming blurted out. "Liars," I muttered. "You just don't remember because they didn't hit you hard enough." I shook my head. "Listen, The purple face is normal. As long as he isn't spitting up blood, he's fine. Actually, even if he spits up a little blood, it's still fine. Dual cultivation always had a price. If he could just find the rhythm, his strength would skyrocket. Having two different energies running at once would make him unstoppable among his peers. Li Yiming sounded like he was having a stroke. Normal? You're saying this is normal? What is he even doing? I can't tell you, I said mysteriously. Just wait for him to wake up and ask him yourself. I hung up. Back in the classroom, the students crowded around Li Yiming. What did he say? He said it's normal. As long as Tao doesn't cough up blood, we should just let him be. The students rolled their eyes. They had no idea what kind of insane training I had put their leader through. Instead of worrying, they all pulled out their phones and started taking selfies with Zhu Tao's purple face. Hold it there, one of them chuckled. I'm going to use this for blackmail later. Mr. Zhu, you wouldn't want the world to see your sweet potato head phase, would you? Even though I told them it was fine, I was still worried. I hurried back to the classroom to make sure he didn't actually explode. When I arrived, I saw them all posing around their unconscious leader like he was a tourist attraction. You brats, I shouted, startling them. You're taking embarrassing photos, and you didn't even wait for me. I barely resisted the urge to pull out my own phone. I cleared my throat and put on my serious teacher face. What are you doing? Get out of here. Morning practice is over. Go get your nutrition fluids. They grumbled and left, their stomachs growling. Once the room was empty, I paced around Zhu Tao. He was deep in the struggle. The differential method was a band-aid. Eventually, he'd have to choose one path. But the kid was stubborn. I did have another option, but it was risky. I had chaos chi. Theoretically, I could use my energy to act as a buffer, blurring the lines between his two energies so they stopped fighting. But everyone's chi is unique. If I put my energy into his body, it wouldn't just help. It might destroy his own energy. If I failed, my chaos chi would just swallow his cultivation like a snack. I'd get stronger by essentially harvesting him, but he'd be left as a hollow shell for months. I wasn't ready to experiment on my students yet. I didn't have that kind of fine control. After about 30 minutes, the purple hue faded. Zhu Tao's breathing leveled out. I breathed a sigh of relief. He'd actually done it. He'd followed my notes perfectly. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked sharper and more energized than ever. He saw me standing there, and his face stiffened, his pride immediately kicking back in. I knew he'd rather die than admit he was practicing my technique. So, I said, giving him an out. How was the turtle breath technique? Good for hiding from monsters, right? Zhu Tao snorted, playing along. You knew what I was doing, so why ask? I rolled my eyes. The others are at the cafeteria. Go get some food. I turned and walked away. He had successfully balanced the two energies, but he wasn't out of the woods yet. His power had increased, but his actual cultivation level hadn't moved an inch. The real challenge was just beginning. I didn't actually walk away empty-handed from that session. As I left the room, I caught a glimpse of Zhu Tao's face. He had a tiny, smug smirk hidden behind his stoic mask. The speed plug method had worked. After dozens of failed attempts, he'd finally found the perfect timing to slide the violent energy of the coiling dragon technique into his meridians without causing a total collapse. He could feel it now, two distinct currents of power surging through him, fueling his strength. This meant he could finally focus on his needle techniques without the constant, bone-breaking pain. Of course, this method had a fatal flaw. Every time one type of energy grew stronger, his internal circulation speed would change, forcing him to manually recalibrate the other energy all over again. But Zhu Tao wasn't worried about the long term yet. His stomach growled like a hungry beast, and he sprinted toward the cafeteria. By the time he got there, the rest of Class 5 was almost finished eating. Zheng Yu looked up, eyes wide with questions, but Zhu Tao shut him down instantly. I was practicing the turtle breath technique, he muttered, grabbing a tray. Internally, he thanked me for giving him such a convenient excuse. It saved him a lot of awkward explaining. I was heading to the cafeteria myself when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Captain Qin Yao. My heart sank. I worried for a second that Yun Qin Group was calling to demand compensation. When I'd saved Li Yiming from that malfunctioning exoskeleton, the feedback from the struggle had bent the metal frame out of shape. Those things cost tens of millions. I couldn't afford a new tire for one, let alone the whole suit. I picked up, sounding cautious. Captain Sheen. Teacher Sue, are you busy? I have some news for you. Good news or bad news? I asked, bracing myself. Good news, she said. Yinxin Group has prepared a 30,000 yuan bonus for you. I blinked, stunned. They weren't suing me. They were paying me. 30,000 yuan. I wasn't about to say no to that. I gave her my bank details immediately, thanking her for the trouble. But Qin Yao didn't hang up. She hesitated, her silence heavy with something she was too embarrassed to say. Captain, I prompted, is there something else I can help with? It's hard to explain over the phone, she admitted. Can we meet at the school gate? I agreed and headed to the north gate. I wasn't arrogant enough to think she was asking me out on a date. She was great, but her personality was a bit too flat for my taste, literally. I figured it was something to do with the Huajin technique, though I doubted I could actually help. When I reached the gate, I saw old Lu, the guard. He looked incredibly annoyed to see me, though I had no idea why. I bowed respectfully, and he just grunted. He looked at the car with a hint of suspicion, sensing a powerful level 5 aura radiating from it. But he let me through without a fuss. Qin Yao stepped out of the car as I approached. Sorry to make you come all this way, Teacher Sue. It's fine. What's going on? She glanced at old Lu at the gate and lowered her voice. Let's walk. Once we were a safe distance away, she took a deep breath. I have an elder in my family. 20 years ago, while hunting down cultists, he was ambushed. He still hasn't recovered. I stared at her. 20 years? And the hidden injury is still there. This went beyond anything I knew. Usually, hidden energy left in a body is like a battery-powered drone. Eventually, the battery dies, or the victim's own energy washes it away. It shouldn't last more than a few weeks. That sounded insane. There was only one explanation. The cultist who hit him must have been incredibly powerful and used a suicidal take you with me strike. The energy was predatory, acting like a parasite. How strong was the cultist? I asked. A level 5 martial king, she replied. My elder is also level 5, but he never mastered the art of neutralizing energy. My scalp went numb. Only a martial king could produce something that terrifying. The fact that her elder was still alive after 20 years was a miracle in itself. But I didn't have the neutralizing energy technique. Even if I did, trying to dissolve the energy of a level 5 king would be like trying to put out a forest fire with a cup of water. I'd likely be consumed by it. Captain, it's not a matter of being willing to help, I said, shaking my head. I don't have that technique. And even if I did, my cultivation is way too low. I'd be dead in seconds. Qin Yao sighed, her shoulders sagging. I understand. We've asked level 5 masters who specialize in neutralizing energy before, but they couldn't help either. My elder's body is too fragile. A powerful master's intervention would be too violent. It would kill him before it killed the hidden energy. She had seen me handle energy with such precision at a low level that she'd hoped I was some kind of prodigy who could perform a miracle. It was a desperate long shot, and she knew it. I'm sorry, I said. I'm just not strong enough. It's okay, she said, forcing a smile. I had to ask. But remember, if you ever want to join the patrol, call me first. I watched her drive away, feeling a weight in my chest. A level 5 curse. That was a league of trouble I wasn't ready for. I watched Qin Yao's car disappear into the distance, a heavy weight settling in my chest. A level 5 curse. That was a league of trouble I wasn't remotely ready for. Truth be told, I wasn't completely helpless. I didn't have the neutralizing energy technique she mentioned, but I had something better, Chaos Chi. While neutralizing energy simply redirects or shifts an opponent's hidden force, Chaos Chi devours it. It consumes foreign energy and turns it into my own power. But the risk was astronomical. The curse from a level 5 martial king was a violent, savage thing. If I tried to absorb it without being strong enough to contain it, I'd explode before I could even process the energy. I simply couldn't survive that kind of pressure yet. I sighed and turned back toward the school gates. As I walked, old Kai's gravelly voice startled me. What's your relationship with that girl from the Qin family? He barked. We're just friends, I replied quickly. Take my advice, he grunted, not looking up. Stay away from the Qin family, unless you want to get burned. I opened my mouth to ask why, But the old man went back to ignoring me like I didn't exist. He was in one of his moods again. I shook my head, frustrated, and walked away. If he didn't want to talk, fine. I pulled out my phone and tried to look up the Qin family. Nothing came up. The only search result was for Qin Yao herself. She was 31 years old, a level 6 martial grandmaster, and a graduate of Kunlun Martial Arts University, one of the top 10 elite academies in the country. She was a true prodigy, a dragon among men. The fact that her elder was a level 5 martial king confirmed my suspicion. The Qin family was likely a hidden, powerful martial clan. Why old Kai wanted me to stay away, I had no clue. But honestly, it wasn't like a high-profile family like theirs would want much to do with a substitute teacher anyway. After a quick dinner, I headed straight for the library. I had work to do. I needed to find a matching cultivation method for Li Yiming. His current efficiency was sitting at a disastrous negative 400%. Unlike Zhu Tao, who just had bad luck, Li Yiming suffered from two major flaws: fading ambition and natural dullness. The dullness was genetic. I couldn't fix his IQ. But the fading ambition was purely psychological. He'd given up on himself because he saw no hope. If I could find him the right technique, give him a taste of progress, his mindset would change. I started running my compatibility simulations again. I went through every major category, but the results were depressing. Unlike Zhu Tao, who hit the jackpot with needles, Li Yiming's numbers were abysmal across the board. The highest I found was a leg technique, at a pathetic 22%. Everything else was in the single digits. It made no sense. His family's legacy, the Han Spirit formula, was a leg-based technique. Why was his compatibility so low? Was it because the technique was too advanced for his dull aptitude? I decided to pivot. I opened the database for basic leg techniques. It was massive, over 4,000 entries. This was going to take days. I set a filter to skip anything below a 300% compatibility rating. With his negative efficiency, anything less than 300% wouldn't even get him back to zero. I settled in for the long haul, checking them one by one. While I was buried in data, my students in Class 5 were busy too. Most students in the school were at self-study, training until they bled, but my delinquents were sitting in a circle playing werewolf to kill time. Zhu Tao wasn't playing, though. "You guys have fun," he said, standing up. "I'm going for a walk." Nobody questioned him. As soon as he cleared the hallway, he bolted for the roof. He was obsessed. Ever since he mastered the differential speed method, he couldn't wait to start the heaven-mending cloud needle technique. He needed a quiet place where the others wouldn't see him practicing girly needlework. He found a secluded corner on the roof and sat down. He pulled a small black cylinder from his bag. Inside were specialized steel needles. He'd spent a fortune online buying these. They were made from stone gold metal, a reinforced alloy harvested from beasts. Ordinary needles would snap under the pressure of a martial artist's energy. He took a deep breath and began to circulate his qi. He had spent the last 3 days secretly sewing curtains and old clothes to practice the movements. Now, he pinched a needle between 2 fingers. It began to vibrate. A faint, rhythmic hum echoed in the air. Zhu Tao's eyes widened. "Holy crap," he whispered. "I really am a genius." In 3 days, he had reached the second stage of the technique. He was successfully channeling his qi into the needle, reinforcing its strength and piercing power. But the real test was the launching phase. Last night, while practicing in secret, he had accidentally performed a move called the flick shot. According to the manual, that move required the final stage of the technique in a level 7 cultivation base. He had done it as a level 1. A God-given talent, he muttered to himself. He realized now that I hadn't just been guessing. I knew. But how? How could a substitute teacher see a talent that even his own family had missed? Was I hiding some secret power? Did I want something from him? He shook the thoughts away. It didn't matter. I had given him a path when everyone else told him he was a failure. "Teacher Sue," he whispered to the empty roof, "I owe you one. One day, when I'm at the top, I'll buy you that villa and the sports car you deserve." But then, his face clouded over. He looked at his hands. He still had the lingering energy of the dragon coiling fist in his system. To truly master the needles, he had to make a choice. He had to purge his family's legacy. He had to destroy his current cultivation and start over from scratch. He was willing to do it, But his parents? His clan? They would never understand. To them, trading a high-level fist for a basic needle was insanity. He sat there in the wind, torn between the legacy he was born with and the greatness I had promised him. The Zhu clan only valued the dragon-coiling fist. Any other technique was treated like garbage. Zhu Tao knew that in the eyes of his family, he was already a disappointment. If he switched to needles, he'd be nothing more than an outcast. Even if he mastered the heaven-mending cloud embroidery technique, he'd peak at level 7. After that, he'd be on his own, searching for rare and obscure manuals that might not even exist. He sat on the roof for a long time, his expression hardening. He had to make a choice. Better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. He didn't want to be a small part of a big legacy. He wanted to be the master of his own. Meanwhile, I spent the entire evening buried in the school library. My eyes were throbbing. I had gone through about a quarter of the library's movement techniques, but I hadn't found a single one that fit Li Yiming. The highest compatibility I found was 67%. I started to wonder if Li Yiming was truly hopeless. Unlike Zhu Tao, who was a hidden genius, Li Yiming seemed to be genuinely held back by his own lack of talent. But I wasn't ready to give up. There were still 3/4 of the library left to scan. I walked back to my dorm, exhausted. As I got closer, I saw a figure loitering by my door. It was Li Yiming, looking suspicious and twitchy. "Old Sue, I've been waiting for ages," he shouted, running over the second he saw me. "Where have you been?" "The library," I said, looking at him skeptically. "What do you want?" "Let's talk inside," he whispered, ushering me toward the door. My faculty dorm was decent, 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. It was much better than the student bunks. All it was missing was a beautiful woman to share it with. "All right, it's late. Why are you here?" I asked. I brought you some stuff." He lifted a heavy bag filled with fruit and snacks. "To thank you for saving my life." I stared at the bag, then at him. "Saving your life? And you brought me apples?" "Well, yeah. What else? If I offered myself to you, you'd be in jail. I'm a minor, Old Sue. 6 years minimum, maybe even the death penalty." I laughed. At least he knew the law. I took the bag and shook my head. "I appreciate the thought. Just listen to me during training from now on. That's all I want." Li Yiming's face turned serious. "I will. I promise." I felt a small wave of pride. These kids were troublemakers, but they weren't bad people. Li Yiming coming here on his own showed he had a good heart. Then, I noticed a red envelope tucked inside the bag. I pulled it out and handed it back to him. "I don't need this," I said. "Come on, it's not much. Just a token of my appreciation. Li Yiming, saving you is my job. I'm your teacher. I want our relationship to be about mentorship, not money." He looked at me for a moment, then nodded and tucked the envelope away. "Old Sue, I knew you were different. I saw it the moment you walked into the classroom. You've got that aura. Handsome, tall, powerful." "Stop," I cut him off, "or I'll change my mind about the snacks." Okay. But seriously, I have a question. Do you know about the Qin family?" I froze. Old Lu's warning from earlier was still ringing in my ears. Since Li Yiming came from a martial arts family, he might know the gossip. "Which Qin family?" "You know, that big sister from the testing hall. The beautiful one." I slapped the back of his head. "Stop being a creep. Tell me what you know." He rubbed his head, grinning. "I don't know her personally, but the Qin family is a big deal. Or they used to be. 20 years ago, they were top tier. Then their patriarch was ambushed and ended up half dead. They've been sliding downhill ever since. In this city, if you don't have a level 5 martial king backing you, your family gets eaten alive by the others." It all clicked. The other clans were circling like vultures, waiting to take the Qin family's place. "It's just how it works," Li Yiming said, shrugging. "Big fish eat little fish. My family is the same. We're just a bunch of followers who never made it big." "Hey, Old Sue, I have an idea." "What?" "Teach me everything you know. When I become the head of my clan, I'll take you to the best clubs and spas every single night." I rolled my eyes. "I'd love to teach you, but can you even learn?" He slumped. "True. Forget I said anything." I understood now why Old Lu told me to stay away from the Qins. They were in a dangerous spot. Even though Qin Yao was a martial grandmaster, she couldn't hold off every other clan forever. I decided then and there to keep my distance. I was just a regular guy, I didn't want to get crushed in a war between giants. I looked at Li Yiming. The kid was ambitious, even if his goals were a bit trashy. So, you want to be the clan leader? I asked. Of course. Who wouldn't? I could sleep wherever I want, do whatever I want. His thoughts were dangerous. I almost felt like I should just hand him over to the police now to save everyone the trouble later. Seeing my sharp gaze, he quickly waved his hands. I'm joking. I'm joking. I know I'm not leader material. I don't even have a seat at the table during family dinners. With my talent, I'm lucky if I can beat a stray dog in a fight. I'll probably just fail my exams and live a quiet, pathetic life. He sighed deeply. I'm just a waste of space. Stop right there, I said, frowning. He looked up, surprised. You aren't a waste, I told him, looking him straight in the eyes. I've been watching you, kid. You have the potential to be a god of war. Li Yiming scratched his head, looking confused. Old Sue, are you blind? I'm serious. You have the talent. The time just hasn't come yet. Oh, he muttered. Then when will it come? When the time is right. He stared at me, completely unimpressed. It was clear he thought I was full of it. But I knew something he didn't. I just had to find that one technique to unlock him. The truth was, I hadn't found a compatible cultivation technique for Li Yiming yet. I couldn't really trick him. Perform deeper ideological work, without a solid plan. My little test today proved he had ambition, which was a good thing. I was only worried about students who had no drive and just wanted to rot. Once a kid loses heart, there's no fixing it. All right, it's late, I said. Go back and rest. We have morning practice tomorrow. Yeah, okay. But old Sue, Li Yiming said, suddenly looking nervous. Don't tell anyone I came here. I snuck out. If the others find out I'm getting close to you, they'll turn on me. In public, I'm still on their side. But privately, if there's any big news, I'll give you a heads up. I watched him leave, feeling a bit amused. I never thought being a teacher would feel like starring in a spy movie. I shut the door and sat down to start my nightly meditation, letting my breathing steady. Outside, Li Yiming was creeping away from the faculty dorms. He didn't notice a pair of eyes watching him from the dark shadows of the bushes. It was Zhu Tao. He had been hiding there all evening, wrestling with a massive decision. He wanted to scrap his current martial arts and start over, but he couldn't let his family know. To officially reset your cultivation at his age, the Martial Arts Association required a guardian to be present. Zhu Tao had realized I was his only option, but then he saw Li Yiming sneaking out of my room. That little fence-sitter is a mole, Zhu Tao thought, his eyes narrowing. He couldn't believe there was a traitor in the ranks. He wondered what kind of bribe I'd given the kid, but then he realized he didn't have much room to talk. Once Li Yiming was gone, Zhu Tao leaped out of the bushes and bolted into the building. A few moments later, he was standing at my door. He hesitated, feeling the sting of his own pride. Then he shook it off. As long as I'm not embarrassed, the embarrassment belongs to someone else, he told himself. Knock, knock, knock. I opened the eyes I had just closed, thinking Li Yiming had forgotten something. I opened the door and saw a teenage boy with his hands behind his back, staring up at the moon from the hallway balcony. He looked cold and lonely. It is lonely at the top, he murmured. He went silent. I blinked, waiting. And, what's the next line? His face turned bright red, and he raised his voice. I said, it is lonely at the top. You can't even finish the poem, I sighed. Get down from there. This is the 12th floor. If you fall, you're breaking your legs. He didn't turn around. It is lonely at the top. Fine, fine, I muttered, giving in. Dancing with one's shadow. It's like being in the human world. Happy now. Zhu Tao finally turned around, his face a mask of cold indifference. Not bad. You are a fellow traveler. He hopped down and brushed past me into my room without waiting for an invitation. My eye twitched. He hadn't been this weird a few days ago. Was the needle technique affecting his brain? Or was he just getting too into the role? I sat back down on my meditation mat. It's the middle of the night. What do you want? Since you've asked so sincerely, I shall tell you, he said. The technique you recommended is good. It suits my taste. But trying to balance two conflicting styles is just treating the symptoms, not the cause. I've decided to scrap my current power and start over. I stared at him in shock. You've thought this through? Yes. Then go do it, I said. You don't need to discuss it with me. My family cannot know. You have to take me to the Martial Arts Association to authorize the reset. Get out, I said, rolling my eyes. Not a chance. The kid was insane. His family had poured a fortune and resources into his body, and he wanted me to help him throw it all away in secret? If they found out, they'd kill me. They'd report me to the school, my career would be over, and I'd probably end up in a jail cell. Zhu Tao went back to staring at the moon through my window. Name your price. It's not about price, I snapped. Losing my job is the best case scenario. I'm not going to prison for you. Forget it. Don't worry, he said. I'll protect you. I'll explain everything when the time comes. No deal. If you want to reset, go talk to your parents. Convince them. Zhu Tao let out a long, heavy sigh. You know that's impossible. Then stop thinking about it. Balancing the two styles is fine. It's a bit of a hassle, but you can still reach the 7th grade safely. And after that, it's your problem, I said. You think I have high-level manuals just lying around? If I were that powerful, would I be sitting here talking to you? He fell silent. I closed my eyes, pretending to meditate again. I wasn't touching this with a 10-foot pole. Teacher, help me, he muttered. I didn't move. I stayed completely still. Seeing that I wasn't budging, his voice hardened again. Fine. I'll just find someone else to take me. He turned to leave, his hands still tucked behind his back. I didn't react. I'm leaving. I'm really leaving now. He stopped at the door. Teacher. Okay, I'll stop acting cool. Just please help me find a way. I opened one eye. There is only one way. Convince your parents. He gave a bitter laugh. The dragon fist is our family legacy. It's our symbol. They will never let me give it up. I don't have the power to convince them. If I have to, I'll just do a self-reset. My heart skipped a beat. A self-reset was a desperate DIY move. You basically stabbed your own pressure points to vent your energy. The survival rate was maybe 20%. Most people who tried it just ended up dead or crippled. I looked at him. These kids in class 5 weren't normal, and Zhu Tao was the most stubborn of the bunch. If I pushed him too hard, he might actually try it. But I still couldn't take the blame for his family's lost investment. I sighed and opened my eyes. I can help you. Zhu Tao's face lit up. Really? But not now, I said, thinking fast. When you reach the 7th grade, come find me. I know a way to let you transition to the new style without needing to reset at all. Zhu Tao froze. He looked at me with deep suspicion. I feel like you're just lying to me to buy time. I winced internally. As expected of the strategist of class 5, he saw right through me. The truth was, resetting now was actually the smartest move for him. But I just couldn't risk my life on it yet. Whether it was the dragon fist or the lingering energy of the cloud-sewing needle, a proper transition meant wiping the slate clean. It was like formatting a hard drive. You had to start from zero so the old energy wouldn't interfere with the new. But right now, with all the eyes on me, I couldn't exactly perform a full energy reset on him. I'll admit, I was stalling. I just needed to buy myself some time. There was actually another solution involving chaotic energy. If I used that, I could skip the reset entirely and spare him the agony of constantly adjusting two conflicting internal techniques. The problem was, I wasn't familiar with chaotic energy yet. My control was sloppy. I needed time to practice until I could achieve precise micromanipulation. Whether you believe me or not is your business, I said, putting on my best mysterious expert face. That is my promise. But I won't help you until you reach the 7th grade. Zhu Tao didn't hesitate for long. He nodded firmly. Fine. I'll listen to you. I'll keep practicing both techniques for now. Once I hit the 7th grade, I'm coming for you. It won't take long. I gave a non-committal grunt. If that's all, you can leave. I need to start my evening practice. Yes, teacher. I'll take my leave, he said, finally bowing and walking away. I opened my eyes and sighed. I was speechless. First, I had to play a spy thriller with Li Yiming, and now I was acting in a period drama with Zhu Tao. Keeping up with these kids was exhausting. But I took the job, so I had to finish it. I shrugged, turned on my phone's timer, and started my own training. I let the chaotic energy flow through my meridians at high speeds. When I opened my eyes and hit the stop button, I couldn't help but grin. Even though I'd seen it before, it still felt unreal. Before this, one full cycle of my energy took 28 minutes. That was way below the national average of 21. Now, With the chaotic energy in my upgraded meridians, I had slashed that time down to 18 minutes. The improvement was terrifying. And that was with me being a total amateur with this energy. I felt like once I truly mastered it, I could get that time down to 10 minutes. In history, the legendary martial gods completed their cycles in about 10 minutes. I was getting close. The foundation of a martial artist is everything. The faster your cycle, the faster you regenerate energy, grow, and heal. The only downside was the massive energy consumption. I had already restocked my fridge and office cooler with nutrition shakes. Usually, a person only does 2 cycles a day, a morning session to absorb world energy and an evening session to solidify the day's progress. Anything more usually overloaded the body and damaged the meridians. But my meridians had been expanded. Theoretically, I could handle 3 or even 4 cycles. I downed 2 bags of nutrition fluid and felt fine. There was none of the muscle soreness or fatigue I used to feel after just 2 rounds. I decided to push my limit. I adjusted my breathing and started again. The nutrition shakes in the fridge began to disappear. 3rd cycle, feeling good. 4th cycle, still going strong. 5th cycle, my muscles started to ache, but I wasn't tired yet. 6th cycle, the fatigue finally hit me. My meridians felt a slight sting. I had burned through 14 bags of nutrition fluid in one night. That was 1,400 yuan literally swallowed. As I lay on my bed, I felt my power level shifting. The bottleneck was loosening. My absolute limit was probably 7 cycles, but 6 was enough for today. If I promoted too fast, my foundation might become unstable. Compared to the kids in class 5, my foundation was actually pretty healthy. I couldn't afford to ruin it. I needed to slow down. But the real problem was money. The 30,000 yuan bonus I just got was already disappearing. The next morning, I did my usual rounds. I checked on the class during their morning practice, then headed to the library to research a suitable technique for Li Yiming. Halfway through, a message popped up in the faculty group chat. Our group leader, Lu Jun, wanted all first-year teachers in the meeting room immediately. I was confused. Emergency meetings only happened when something was seriously wrong. Most of the teachers were already there when I arrived. I whispered to a few colleagues, but no one knew what was going on. All right, quiet down, Lu Jun said, appearing at the front with a grim expression. The room went silent. We have a situation. Last night, someone tried to break into the school. It was a masked 6th-grade martial sovereign. The elders managed to drive him off, but he escaped. The room erupted in whispers. I couldn't believe it either. Who was stupid enough to try and break into a school guarded by 4 martial sovereigns? What was the goal? One teacher asked. Most likely the students, Lu Jun replied. The elders said he was heading toward the dorms. The patrol teams are investigating, but to be safe, the school board decided that teachers will now form night patrols to ensure student safety. We all agreed. It was for the kids, after all. We drew lots to form 2-person teams. My luck was interesting. I drew Chen Ming. He was an older guy, a former frontline combat instructor who had lost an arm in battle. He had retired and transferred here as a martial arts instructor to teach the kids practical combat, especially how to fight beasts. He hadn't been a teacher as long as I had, only about a year. He was a man of few words and carried a heavy, intense aura from his time at the front. Most people respected him deeply. Without people like Chun Ming bleeding on the front lines, we wouldn't have this peaceful life. I walked over to him, holding my slip of paper with the number 17 on it. Hey, Brother Chun. Looks like we're partners for the patrol. Chun Ming's face was dark and weathered. He didn't smile. He just gave me a short nod and didn't say a word. I decided not to push it. He wasn't the type for small talk, and I didn't want to annoy him. Outside of class, Chun Ming was a ghost. He spent all his time cultivating in his room. Whenever we crossed paths, we just exchanged a stiff nod. There was a generation gap between us, too. He was 48, 12 years older than me. Once the patrol teams were set, Lu Jun spoke up again. He told us to keep the intruder incident a secret. He didn't want the students panicking or getting distracted from their training. We all muttered our agreement. I had a sneaking suspicion, though. Was that martial sovereign coming from my class? My group of delinquents were experts at causing trouble. Plus, they were all from powerful families. It was highly likely they had offended someone who wanted revenge. I wasn't the only one thinking it. Lu Zhen pulled me aside after the meeting ended. Suyang, keep a close eye on Class 5, he whispered. Don't let them wander off. I think that masked intruder might be after them. They're the biggest heat magnets in this school. I wanted to argue. Other classes had rich kids, too. But deep down, I knew he was right. My students were practically begging for a reality check. Director, honestly, that intruder must be insane, I muttered. Doesn't he know we have 4 gatekeepers guarding this place? Lu Zhen looked around to make sure we were alone. He leaned in close. 2 of the old men got hurt, he whispered. It's not life-threatening, but keep it quiet. They have a lot of pride. My scalp went numb. The intruder fought off 2 sovereigns and still got away. That meant he was likely a peak 6th grade sovereign. Maybe even a half-step martial king. Damn it, Lu Zhen sighed, rubbing his temples. Why is this semester so chaotic? I felt a sudden pang of guilt. Was this some kind of butterfly effect caused by my system? I didn't want to stick around for more questions. Oh, Suyang, I need to discuss something else with you. Director, my stomach hurts. I interrupted, clutching my gut. I need a bathroom. Let's talk another day. I bolted before he could respond. Behind me, I heard him growl about how young people were getting harder to fool these days. He looked down at his ruined marble desk and sighed, wondering if he should just buy a grinder to turn the evidence into dust. After my evening practice, I met up with Chun Ming. The campus was massive. The 3 grade levels were separated into different sections, each kilometers apart. Because of the size, there were dozens of patrol teams covering every corner. Chun Ming and I were assigned to the north gate. When we met, he gave me his usual silent nod. We started walking. Neither of us said a word. I'm a talker by nature, so the silence was agonizing. I looked at the other teams, feeling jealous of the guys paired with the pretty young teachers from the first-year group. Unfortunately, there were no beautiful women in my sector tonight. After 30 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore. Brother Chun, can I ask you something? I glanced at his empty right sleeve. He was a veteran. The government had great benefits for retired soldiers, and prosthetic tech was incredibly advanced now. With the subsidies, he could have easily afforded a high-end mechanical arm that functioned perfectly. I don't need it, Chen Ming said. His voice was deep and heavy. I only need one hand to kill beasts. I choked on my next words. I didn't know how to respond to that level of intensity. In the future, if you see a beast, even a humanoid one, show no mercy, he added. I'll keep that in mind, I said, though I thought he was overestimating me. Humanoid beasts were incredibly rare. They were the equivalent of martial emperors. If I ever ran into one, I wouldn't know if I was lucky or just dead. I decided to shift the topic to training. Most teachers avoided talking about the war to spare Chun Ming the trauma, but I needed his expertise. Brother Chun, you know I practice the 9 refinements body technique, I said with a sheepish grin. But I have 0 real combat experience. I'm mostly a human punching bag. I'd love some pointers. With my chaos chi and super meridians, just having high defense felt like a waste. I needed to learn how to actually fight. I can do that, Chen Ming replied. What level are you at? 2nd layer. Copper bone, I said. I held up my right hand. I had already finished the enchantment process on this palm. Chen Ming reached out with his left hand and squeezed my palm. He paused. He frowned. Something's wrong, he muttered. What is it? I asked, feigning confusion. The texture is off, Chen Ming said, his eyes narrowing. This doesn't feel like the 2nd layer. It feels like the 3rd. No, maybe even the 4th. I shouldn't have been surprised. I had used chaos chi to refine my bones. The density was far beyond a normal copper bone level. I just didn't have a frame of reference to know how strong I actually was. Chen Ming, however, had seen everything on the front lines. How can you tell just by feeling it? I asked. Experience, he said, looking at me seriously. I'm not joking. I believe you, I said. Maybe it's because I was stuck at the peak of the martial artist realm for so long. My body must have settled. Chen Ming nodded. It means you've put in the hard work. Also, congratulations on reaching the martial master rank. I smiled. News traveled fast among the faculty. Reaching the 8th grade meant I could finally hold my head high in the teacher's lounge. Brother Chun, how strong does it feel exactly? I asked. I wanted a free power assessment. He stayed silent for a moment, thinking. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th layer. Do you mind if I check other areas? I spread my arms, signaling him to go ahead. Chun Ming began tapping and pressing on my arms and shoulders, his expression growing more surprised by the second. A strange expression crossed Chun Ming's usually stoic face. He pulled back, looking at my hand with suspicion. Only your right palm has this level of hardness, he noted. The rest of your body doesn't even feel like it's reached the second layer yet. You must really like that right hand. You've clearly spent a lot of time working on it. I felt a bit awkward. I wondered if he was making a joke, but his face remained dead serious. Brother Chun, with just this right hand, could I block a 7th grade, 5-year-old practitioner? I asked. If they only hit your palm, sure, Chun Ming replied. But the rest of your body is too brittle. If you could get your whole frame to match the density of your hand, a 7th grade wouldn't be able to touch you. You could even take a single hit from a grandmaster and survive. Chun Ming himself was at the peak of the 7th grade. Even with one arm missing, he was the ceiling of power among the teachers at 3rd high, equal to the vice principal. Honestly, if it came down to a real fight, I bet the vice principal wouldn't stand a chance against a frontline veteran like Chun Ming. Thanks for the guidance, I said. It probably took you years to get your hand to this level. Chun Ming said encouragingly. Don't give up. If you stay focused, you might complete the full-body refinement by the time you're 50. You have the potential to become a true half-step grandmaster. I nodded quickly. I knew he wasn't mocking me. He was actually being generous. Before I got the system, the peak of the 8th grade was my absolute limit. Reaching the 7th grade would have been a pipe dream. Martial arts is a slow grind of accumulation and massive resources. Without money, you don't get far. But Chun Ming's assessment gave me a huge confidence boost. For me, refinement wasn't a 30-year project. As long as I had enough energy, it was easy. Once I reached the copper bone mastery, 7th grade experts wouldn't be a threat. I might not be able to beat them, but I could certainly survive. And if I couldn't win, I could always use my turtle breath technique to play dead. As long as they didn't double tap, I'd live. I realized I'd misjudged Chun Ming. He wasn't cold, he was just quiet. Back to patrol, Chun Ming said, his gaze suddenly drifting. Is something wrong? I asked. The masked grandmaster from last night, he said quietly. He was strong, not your average peak-level fighter. I blinked. I had been so busy acting with Li Yiming and Zhu Tao that I hadn't noticed a thing. You want to check it out? I heard something and headed over. Chun Ming said, looking toward the school gates. The old masters teamed up and forced him back. The group leader said 2 of the masters were injured. He nodded slightly. Yes, the intruder was forced to retreat, but he didn't lose. Honestly, it's a bit embarrassing. 4 against 1, and he still escaped. Based on his movements, he's a killer. My face paled. It wanted criminal. No. Chun Ming shook his head. He felt professionally trained. He went straight for vitals. His movement techniques were incredible. I suspect he's an assassin. He tried to sneak in, but he was too arrogant. He underestimated the sensory range of the old masters. Someone that arrogant won't stop until the job is done. He shot me a sharp look. Until this is resolved, patrols are mandatory. They might target the teachers next. Stay safe. My heart tightened. Better safe than sorry. I decided to pause the research for Li Yiming's new cultivation method. Starting tomorrow, I needed to dump all my chaos chi into the refinement process. I had to reach Copperbone Mastery as fast as possible to stay alive. That night, I stayed up late in my dorm, refining my other hand. By dawn, both hands had undergone the Copperbone transformation. I grit my teeth and dipped into my savings, spending 60,000 yuan on high-grade nutrition fluids. I was going all in. Over the next few days, I barely left my room except for morning drills and night patrols. The Kunlun patrol team had started circling the school, and the masked man hadn't reappeared. Finally, I sat cross-legged in my office, trembling with excitement. I was one step away. The only thing left was the most dangerous part, the skull. This required absolute precision. I had to keep the chi moving between the bone and the skin. One slip, and I could damage my brain or central nervous system. There were stories of professors at the martial arts university giving themselves concussions or even brain hemorrhages trying this. I was terrified. Even with my increased proficiency, I was trying to do in 3 days what took others 30 years. I actually considered pre-booking an ICU bed just in case. I sat there for a long time, unable to start. I needed a way to lower the risk. Then, a wild idea popped into my head. My invincible teacher system triggered whenever a student attacked me, canceling out all damage. If I timed it right, I could have a student attack me the moment I felt the chi going out of control. The system would force me into an invincible state, neutralizing the internal damage. But there was a problem. My chaos chi was too strong now. If a student used normal hidden force, my body would just swallow it up before the system even registered a threat. I needed something sharper. Something with a kick. I pulled out my phone and messaged Li Yiming. I told him to bring his Thunderbolt needles to my office immediately. Li Yiming showed up a few minutes later, looking confused. He'd snuck out of a class game of werewolf to get here. "Old Sue, I'm here. Open up," he whispered. I let him in and locked the door. "Did you bring the needles?" He raised his arm, showing the launcher strapped to his wrist. "Yeah, but what's this about?" "You're going to help me cultivate," I said. Li Yiming stared at me like I was insane. "With the needles?" "Listen closely," I said, ignoring his shock. "I'm going to start my meditation. I need to be completely focused. I won't be able to warn you when I'm in trouble," I told Li Yiming, my voice low and serious. "So you need to watch me closely. If you see me twitch, or if anything looks wrong, don't hesitate. Hit me with a needle immediately." Li Yiming scratched his head, looking completely dazed. "Got it, I think." I could tell his brain was buzzing. The developers of the Thunderbolt needles probably never imagined their high-tech weapon being used as a training accessory. "Are you ready?" I asked. "Not really," he admitted. "Good. I'm starting." I didn't wait for him to process it. I closed my eyes and entered a deep meditative state. The world around me began to blur until my focus narrowed down to a single point, the chaos chi swirling inside my chest. I began to guide it upward, aiming for my skull. The chaos chi was unruly. It moved like a snake, slithering in jagged lines and constantly trying to veer off course. I had to fight it every inch of the way, dragging it back toward the target. Finally, the chi reached my head. Now came the hard part, bone coating. I had to wrap the chi around the surface of my skull like silk thread. Once enough layers were wound together, they would fuse into a protective membrane. The catch was that the chi had to stay on the surface. If it leaked into the bone itself, the process would fail, and my head would likely explode. I started the first wrap. It was agonizingly slow. Guiding the chi in a straight line was hard enough, but trying to loop it in a perfect circle was a nightmare. I hadn't even finished the first lap when the chi spiked. It veered off the track and bored straight into my skull. A sharp, white-hot pain stabbed through my brain. Standing next to me, Li Yiming saw my eyelid twitch. He didn't say a word. He slammed the trigger on his wrist. Thwack! The needle hit. I felt the surge of electricity, and instantly, the pain vanished. The system had kicked in. I was invincible. It worked. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the chaos chi and pulled it back into position, starting the wrap again. It took 3 more failures and 3 more needles, but I finally finished the first loop. I tied a tiny knot in the chi to stabilize it and started the second layer. Time lost all meaning. Half an hour passed. Li Yiming had already fired 36 needles. He watched me sitting there, cross-legged and motionless, feeling like the whole situation was becoming absurd. He'd seen me tank these needles before, but watching me use them like vitamins was something else entirely. Then, Li Yiming's expression changed. He checked his launcher. The battery was down to 20%. These needles weren't rechargeable. They used miniature antimatter fuel cells that cost 50,000 yuan a pop. A full cell lasted for about 500 shots. Li Yiming had owned this device since the start of the semester and had only fired 100 shots total, most of which had been aimed at me. "I hope this battery holds out," he muttered, staring at me. Whenever I flinched, he fired. Then he'd scramble to recover the needles, resetting them as fast as he could. Another half hour went by. My chi was becoming more violent, and I was failing the wraps more frequently. Li Yiming checked the battery again. 40% gone. "Old Sue," he whispered. No response. I was too deep in the zone to hear him. My perception of the outside world was almost zero. 1 hour passed. 2 hours. Li Yiming had turned off his phone to make sure we weren't interrupted, but he was sweating now. The launcher was flashing red. He was down to his last few bars of power, and I showed no signs of waking up. He didn't have a spare battery in the dorm. He never thought he'd burn through a whole cell in a single afternoon. Crap, he hissed. What do I do when it dies? My brow furrowed again. Thwack, another needle. 9 left. He counted, his face pale. He was pacing like a caged animal. If the power ran out and I hit a snag in my cultivation, I could die. He looked around the room frantically until his eyes landed on the power strip at the corner of my desk. He blinked. He looked at me, then back at the outlet. Old Sue has survived 400 needles, he muttered to himself. If he can handle that, surely household electricity won't kill him. The Thunderbolt needles delivered a massive, non-lethal high-voltage spike. Regular wall outlets were lower voltage but constant. It was a huge risk, but he was out of options. I twitched again. Li Yiming fired one more needle, 8 left, and then lunged for the power strip. He ripped out all the plugs, grabbed the strip, and realized the cord was just long enough to reach me. He smashed the plastic casing off the outlet, exposing the wires. Then, he grabbed my hand and shoved 2 of my fingers directly into the live socket. He scrambled back, holding the main plug for the power strip like a detonator. He watched me, his breath hitching in his throat. The moment he saw my face contort in pain, he slammed the plug into the wall. Zap! My features immediately smoothed out. The invincible state triggered perfectly. I'm a freaking genius. Li Yiming exhaled, slumped against the wall. He pulled the plug out as soon as I looked stable. He realized he'd been wasting money this whole time. Why buy expensive needles when I could just hold on to a live wire? Old Sue probably hasn't realized this works yet, he thought, the weight lifting off his chest. Next time, he won't even need me. He can just grab the electric fence himself. Inside my own head, I was finishing the final layer of the bone coating. With Li Yiming's assistance, the process was moving at lightning speed. I didn't have time to be elegant or precise. It was a brutal cycle of failure and reset. I wasn't a genius who could master Qi overnight, but with a student willing to electrocute me every 30 seconds, I didn't have to be. I realized that some things just take time. The chaotic energy I'd been gathering was finally beginning to stabilize. It swirled around my skull, nearing the very top. I had failed 15 times in a row, but on the 20th attempt, the energy finally locked into place. The top of my skull was fully coated. The enchantment was complete. A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I couldn't help it. Li Yiming saw my expression and took it as a signal. He slammed the plug back into the socket, sending another jolt through me. But when he saw my grin widening despite the electricity, his face went pale. He panicked, thinking the voltage wasn't high enough, but he had no idea where to find a stronger power source on short notice. I snapped my eyes open, giving him a massive fright. Old Sue, how is it? He stammered. Thanks to you, my cultivation was a huge success, I said. Then I looked down at my 2 fingers still jammed inside the power strip. My Thunderbolt needles ran out of juice, Li Yiming explained quickly, pulling the plug. I had to use this instead. I hope it worked. It worked just fine, I replied, standing up and stretching my limbs. Staying in one position for so long had made my bones stiff. As I moved, the thin film of chaotic energy around my skeleton expanded and settled. My entire body erupted in a series of loud, rhythmic pops, like firecrackers going off under my skin. It felt incredible. Li Yiming didn't seem surprised by my weird training method. He figured that since I was a master of the hidden realm, my techniques were bound to be eccentric. He just didn't expect me to be a human battery. Old Sue, don't tell me your secret body refining method is just getting electrocuted, he said, sounding skeptical. Of course not, I lied smoothly. This was just a small part of it. He looked relieved. Good. Well, I'm glad I could help. I should probably get back before the others notice I'm gone. Wait, he added, holding up his needle launcher. My device is fried. I need new batteries. They're expensive. I was in such a good mood that I didn't even think before answering. No problem. I'll reimburse you. How much? 50,000. I nearly choked. Is that battery made of solid gold? It's an antimatter fuel cell, he muttered. I winced. My $6,000 budget was already screaming, and now this? Still, achieving a perfect bone coating was worth tens of millions. You couldn't buy this kind of progress. Put it on my tab, I told him. I'll pay you back when my year-end bonus kicks in. Li Yiming laughed and waved me off. I'm just joking. You saved my life. I'd never charge you for this. I've got to run. I need to think of an excuse for where I've been. He slipped out of the office. Once he was gone, I slammed my fists together. There was almost no pain. According to my friend Shun, a 7th-stage expert couldn't even scratch me now. Only a 5th-level master or higher could actually hurt me. Defensively, I was basically a demigod. I felt so good that I decided I had to find a better cultivation manual for Li Yiming as a reward. Meanwhile, the boy himself hurried back to the classroom, worried his absence had caused a stir. He walked in to find the rest of Class 5 still obsessed with their game of werewolf. Nobody even looked up. He felt a sting of insult. He'd been gone for hours, and they didn't care. He tapped one student on the shoulder. What? The kid snapped, not looking away from his cards. You're breaking my concentration. I've been gone for hours. Li Yiming yelled. Oh, the kid blinked. Where'd you go? Just walking, Li Yiming muttered, defeated. He looked around the room and noticed Zhu Tao was still missing. It wasn't unusual. Ever since morning practice ended days ago, the class leader had been a ghost. Class 5 had a strange dynamic. They were a team when it came to games or pranking teachers, but outside of that, they were rivals from powerful families. They didn't keep tabs on each other. Up on the roof, Zhu Tao stood against the wind. His eyes were shut tight, his right hand held out with 2 fingers extended. A dozen thin black threads trailed from his fingertips, connected to specialized steel needles dangling in the air. He opened his eyes, his gaze sharp and cold. Now, the needles snapped toward him, but instead of flying true, they all slammed into his own palm. He hissed in pain, pulling the needles out one by one. They hadn't gone deep, but they stung like hell. Despite the blood, he was grinning. His progress with the cloud-mending needle technique was staggering. He was almost at the end of the 2nd stage. He couldn't project his energy through the air yet. That was for legendary martial emperors. But he was mastering the art of using the black threads as a medium to control the needles. Soon, he'd be able to fire them from his sleeves with a flick of his wrist. He had the control, but he lacked a target. He needed someone he could actually practice on. Someone who wouldn't die if he messed up. My face flashed through his mind. I was the perfect training dummy. I had the hidden realm defense. I was practically invincible to him. Later that night, I had just finished my rounds and returned to my dorm when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to see a teenage boy standing dramatically on the balcony, staring at the moon. I didn't have time for his theatrics. I slammed the door in his face. The knocking started again, more urgent this time. Teacher, I'll stop acting cool, just let me in. I opened the door again, annoyed. I told you, don't come back until you've reached the 7th stage. I'm not helping you until then. It's not that, Zhu Tao said quickly. It's something else. Only you can help me. Fine. Come in and talk. Teacher, I've almost mastered the 2nd stage of the needle technique, he said, his voice full of excitement. I need a sparring partner to help me break through to the 3rd. I stared at him. The kid was a total cheat code. That technique was supposed to take years to learn, and he'd done it in less than a week. He was standing there with his chin up, looking incredibly smug. It was annoying, but I realized his talent was the real deal. Zhu Tao's progress was explosive, but his foundation was shaky. I could see the side effects starting to surface, though there wasn't much I could do about it now. So, how do you want to spar? I asked. Simple, he said, his expression dead serious. Take off your shirt. I need to poke you a few times to get a feel for the needles. I hesitated, but I'd read the manual for the patching heaven technique. If he wanted real results, practicing on a living person was the fastest way. It was just a bit hard on the target. You aren't worried you'll kill me? I joked. You're the teacher, he replied, like it was obvious. Just stand still. I frowned. Your attitude is making me lose my motivation. Fine. Do I need to bow to you? No need, I said, waving him off. I only have one request. When you eventually cause trouble out there, just don't tell anyone I'm the one who taught you. I'll try, he muttered. I sighed and stripped off my shirt. I felt like a human tool, but if Zhu Tao got stronger, I'd get the energy feedback. It was a win-win. Plus, it was a good chance to build some rapport. Zhu Tao pulled up an acupuncture chart on his phone and started cross-referencing my back. The silence was getting awkward, so I decided to strike up a conversation. Have you thought about your future lately? I asked. He kept his eyes on the chart. Since I actually have talent now, I'm not going to rot away. I have a goal. I felt a surge of pride. My plan was working. These kids were finally finding their drive. What kind of goal? Zhu Tao's face darkened. I have a childhood sweetheart. Once I'm strong enough, I'm going to marry her. I blinked. I didn't take him for the romantic type. But then I saw the look in his eyes. It wasn't love. It was something much more complicated. In these big martial families, marriage was rarely about choice. If you were weak, you were just a pawn. Work hard then, I said softly. If you're strong enough, you can make your own happy ending. Zhu Tao snorted. Happy ending? Forget that. That girl bullied and humiliated me since we were kids because her talent was better than mine. I couldn't fight back. I just had to take it. He grit his teeth, his voice dripping with spite. When I'm powerful enough, I'll marry her just to make her life miserable. I stared at him. This kid was definitely a handful. His motivation was pure spite. That's a terrible mindset, I said, putting on my serious teacher voice. That's just revenge. It'll blind you. You need a bigger vision. You're supposed to be a pillar of society, a protector of humanity. Don't let a petty grudge be your stumbling block. Zhu Tao rolled his eyes. He clearly hated the lecturing, but he didn't argue. He needed me. Anyway, I continued, marrying someone you hate just to spite them is like setting your own house on fire to annoy the neighbor. It's not worth it. I decided to drop the heavy stuff for now. Values are built over time, not in one night. Just be someone who can look yourself in the mirror without shame, I said quietly. Zhu Tao paused, his hand hovering near my shoulder. You really are different from the other teachers. I know. I'm exceptionally handsome. Try not to let it distract you. He actually rolled his eyes this time. And you're the most shameless person I've ever met. But thanks. If it weren't for you, I'd never have found this path. I won't forget that. Zhu Tao put his weight into it, looking like he was trying to drill a hole in my skin. You could have mentioned you were working that hard for us. Who's going to notice if you do it behind our backs? Fair point, I laughed. Next time, I'll make sure to complain more. After a while, Zhu Tao's hands started to tire. He looked at me, his confidence wavering for a split second. Teacher, can I really become a martial god? I looked at him seriously. The world is full of geniuses. The kids at the first martial arts high school, the ones from your own family, they've been training with the best resources since they could walk. Zhu Tao's expression turned cold and sharp. I knew that look. In big families, you're either the golden child or the trash. There is no middle ground. Class 5 had all chosen to be trash rather than face the humiliation of losing. But looking at Zhu Tao now, I knew he wasn't going to stay in the trash heap much longer. Blood relations were a funny thing. Even if these kids were seen as failures, their families would always provide enough to keep them comfortable for life. But the world is a massive place, and there's always someone stronger. I needed them to understand that humility was their only real shield. I get it, Zhu Tao said, leaning into the massage. No pain, no gain, right? You have to suffer to stand above others. That depends on the environment, I corrected him. In the world of martial arts, that logic is flawed. If you're heading in the wrong direction, you're just suffering for the sake of suffering. You can eat all the bitterness in the world, but you'll never reach the top if the path is wrong. I felt like I had earned the right to say that. Before I took over Class 5, these kids were pouring effort into training methods that actually made their progress regress. It was meaningless. That's why a good mentor is worth their weight in gold. I grinned. Listen to your teacher. At least this way, your hard work will actually show results. I feel like you're insulting me, Zhu Tao muttered, but I can't even argue with it. I shrugged. Think whatever you want. I just want you guys to have a future. Zhu Tao raised an eyebrow, a playful smirk dancing on his lips. And you want a future too, right? I laughed. Exactly. I'm not some selfless saint. Whether I get promoted to principal one day depends entirely on whether you lot actually amount to something. You know, I'm starting to really like your style, Zhu Tao said. He was looking at me with genuine respect now. Being your student isn't half bad. Just remember to give me a 5-star review when you graduate. Please, don't, I said, shaking my head. Entering an ancestral hall is a high honor, but I'm not even a Zhu. How so? I asked, letting him practice since I couldn't feel the needles anyway. Besides me, everyone in Class 5 is an idiot. I couldn't help but laugh. It was just like Li Yiming had said, they all looked down on each other. Then how do you guys even hang out together? No choice, he grunted. We see each other every day. Besides, if I don't hang out with them, how can I feel superior about my own IQ? The logic of Class 5 was truly something else. You guys should try to be more united. Impossible. Family politics are involved. Sooner or later, we're all going to be rivals. Are you really that cynical at your age? It's unavoidable, Zhu Tao sighed. He looked at the pattern he'd made with the needle marks on my back, which spelled out "You are my dad," and looked quite satisfied with himself. As it got late, I sent him back to the dorms. I told him to come back every night to practice. As he reached the door, he looked a bit guilty. Teacher, let me ask you something. You wouldn't actually hit a student, would you? I was confused. Of course not. You guys have pranked me so many times. Have I ever laid a hand on you? Good. That's a relief. He paused. I mean, if you want to win over the others, you definitely shouldn't use force. They respond to the carrot, not the stick. I smiled. The kid was actually looking out for me now. Thanks for the tip. Zhu Tao gave a dry laugh and bolted. He had only intended it as a prank, thinking the needle marks on my back would fade instantly because of my internal energy. But 30 minutes had passed, and the marks were still clearly visible. Once I was alone in my room, I checked the time. It was time for my final cultivation cycle of the day. This was my 7th one, my absolute limit. I had to push myself. Zhu Tao's progress with the heaven-mending cloud technique was terrifyingly fast. He'd reached the 7th stage in no time, but his foundation would be a mess. I needed to solve the dual cultivation conflict for him and the rest of the class. They couldn't start over from scratch. They had to merge their existing energies. The only way was to use my chaos chi to act as a bridge, blending their conflicting powers into one. Normally, mastering that level of control would take decades. But by expanding my meridians and grinding through 7 cycles a day, I was force leveling my proficiency. My savings were draining fast, but that didn't matter. The next day, after checking on the class, I headed back to the library to find a technique for Li Yiming. I cleared out more of the database, but the compatibility scores were pathetic. Nothing even hit 100%. I started to wonder if I was looking in the wrong place. I briefly considered checking for the other students, then stopped myself. Why go looking for more headaches? If I found a match and they refused to cooperate, I'd just be more stressed. Ignorance was bliss. My head throbbed from the sheer volume of Chinese martial arts history I was scanning. I hit a wall. In desperation, I started looking through the remnant scrolls, incomplete techniques that most people ignored. I scanned a fragmented leg technique. Compatibility check in progress. Asterisk check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming. 34%, plus or minus? Asterisk. I blinked. The question mark meant the missing parts of the scroll couldn't be calculated. That meant if the missing pieces were filled in, the compatibility could either skyrocket or plummet. A bold, dangerous idea took root in my mind. If I couldn't find a perfect technique, could I just rewrite one? Could I modify a technique until it was perfectly tailored for Li Yiming? Most martial arts techniques are divided into levels or layers. My own 9 refinements body script has 9 levels, while Zhu Tao's heaven-mending cloud needle technique has 6. I knew that removing even a single layer would change the compatibility score. It could go up, or it could crash. If I cut a core part, the whole thing might become useless. Still, I had to try. I pulled up a leg technique called the Heavenly Whirl Kick. It already had a solid 87% compatibility with Li Yiming across its 7 levels. If mastered, it could lead someone all the way to the 5 Venerables realm. I opened a new document, deleted the first level, and ran the check. Compatibility check failed. Missing core components. I rubbed my chin. Okay, so the foundation was non-negotiable. I restored the first level and deleted the final, 7th level instead. Check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 143%. My eyes nearly popped out of my head. Deleting the final stage caused the compatibility to jump by over 60%? Was the technique just too high-end for him? I looked closer at the description. The final level only affected the ceiling of the power. Without it, Li Yiming could only reach the peak of the 7th rank, but he'd learn it much faster. I got greedy. I deleted the 6th level too. Check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 278%. It doubled again. The problem was the ceiling. Now, he could only reach the middle of the 7th rank. I pushed my luck one more time and deleted the 5th level. Check complete. Compatibility with Li Yiming, 368%. I scratched my head, looking at the screen. I had turned the heavenly whirl kick into a crippled whirl kick. Yet the compatibility was now perfect. I tried deleting the 4th level, but the system barked back at me. The first 4 levels were the core, the rest were just advanced add-ons. I tried the same trick with the heaven-mending cloud needle technique, deleting from the back to the front. This time, it backfired. Deleting the final layer caused the compatibility to plummet to 224%. It seemed the first 5 layers were all essential. The data was clear. Li Yiming was perfectly suited for the first 4 levels of the whirl kick. Anything more would just slow him down. The downside? He'd hit a wall early and have to switch techniques once he reached the 7th rank. Usually, only geniuses with incredible martial intuition can bridge that gap on their own. I didn't think Zhu Tao or Li Yiming had that kind of brain power, but I didn't have a choice. I saved the modified 4-level version and kept searching. I couldn't settle for good enough when I still had half the database to scan. Suddenly, a surge of pure, refined energy slammed into my body. My head rang with a system notification. Task complete. Newbie gift pack has been sent to your inventory. I blinked, coming back to reality. I immediately checked Zhu Tao's stats. His grade had jumped from E to D. The system tracks major realms, so his overall rank looked the same, but I knew what this meant. This was his second minor breakthrough in a row. He was now a high-stage 8th rank martial artist. His growth was insane. Clearly, using me as a human punching bag last night had given him some serious inspiration. I guided that flood of energy into my meridians, converting it and storing it in my dantian. Usually, storing that much raw power causes a sharp, stinging pain, sort of like a bad cramp. But maybe because I'd expanded my meridians, or because of my teacher's invincibility buff, I didn't feel a thing. I ignored the why and opened the gift pack. Inside were 2 items, a skill called Teacher's Majesty and a realm-breaking pill. I didn't hesitate. I learned the skill instantly. Asterisk Teacher's Majesty, an epic active skill. Consumes stamina to strike awe and fear into students. Asterisk. Effectiveness depends on the user's condition. Only works on bound students. No cooldown. I grinned. This was exactly what I needed. Those brats in Class 5 only left me alone because they couldn't hurt me, but they didn't respect me. With this, I could finally make them listen. Then, I looked at the realm-breaking pill. My smile widened until my face hurt. This pill allowed a user to ignore a cultivation bottleneck and force a breakthrough, valid for anyone below the 5 Venerables realm. In the world of martial arts, the jump from the peak of the 7th rank to the 5 Venerables is the Great Wall. Everything before that is just about accumulating energy. But becoming a venerable requires a qualitative transformation. It's where true masters are born, and it's where thousands of martial artists get stuck for life. With this pill, that wall didn't exist for me. It was worth more than a mansion or a fleet of supercars. Once I hit that rank, money would never be an issue again. I tucked the pill away safely, my heart racing. This system really knew how to deliver the goods. But my excitement died down when the next main quest flashed before my eyes. Main quest updated. Bring all students in the class to a D grade evaluation. Reward, 5G Mega Gift Pack. Time limit, none. I groaned. Raising their strength wasn't the hard part. If their powerful families found out I was experimenting on their kids, I wouldn't just lose my job. I'd probably end up in a ditch. I needed to master that chaos chi and blend my energies fast. There was no room for error. With the system rewards in hand, the risk of my secrets leaking was finally manageable. But before I could move forward, I needed to test my new skill, Teacher's Majesty. I'd been looking for a way to put these little rebels in their place for a long time. I headed straight for the classroom. While the other classes were busy training and grinding to improve their martial arts, my students in Class 5 were doing what they did best, absolutely nothing. They were huddled around desks, playing cards and laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. They were experts at everything except actual studying. Zhu Tao wasn't there. He was probably off training alone somewhere. Usually, I wouldn't have bothered to intervene. Managing them was a lost cause, and Teacher's Majesty drained my stamina. I couldn't afford to use it on the whole group at once. If I ran out of energy and collapsed in front of them, I'd never live it down. I decided to pick a single target for a test run. I scanned the room from the doorway, and my eyes locked onto Sun Zhao. He looked like a perfect candidate. I walked into the room with my hands behind my back. The students glanced at me, but they didn't stop their game. They didn't think I was worth the effort. Sun Zhao was deep into a game of Do Diju, completely ignoring my presence even as I leaned over his shoulder. He's got 3 2s and a pair of aces, I said calmly. Sun Zhao snapped. He spun around, face flushed with rage. Are you looking for trouble? I didn't blink. I activated Teacher's Majesty. Instantly, I felt my stamina begin to drain like a leaking battery. But the effect was immediate. Sun Zhao's angry expression melted into one of confusion and fear. He looked away, his eyes darting around the room, unable to meet my gaze. He swallowed his pride and turned back to the table, silenced. The other 2 students at the table were stunned. They couldn't believe Sun Zhao had just backed down. You're being way too bold, I said, puffing out my chest and letting out a cold snort. Disrespecting your teacher? Outside. Now. I turned and walked out without waiting for an answer. The rest of the class looked up, completely baffled. We usually had a "don't bother me, I won't bother you" arrangement. Why was I acting up today? More importantly, why would Sun Zhao actually listen? To their absolute shock, Sun Zhao hesitated for a second, then stood up and followed me out. He didn't even finish his hand. The rest of the students rushed to the door to watch the spectacle. Outside, Sun Zhao kept his head down. He didn't say a word. He looked like he didn't even know why he was being so submissive. Usually, he didn't give me the time of day, but today, he felt a crushing sense of dread whenever he looked at me. I kept a stern face, though I was cheering on the inside. Who gave you permission to play cards during cultivation hours? Do you have no respect for me at all? Sun Zhao's temper flared again. He knew I was targeting him specifically. Everyone was playing cards, yet I was only chewing him out. He looked up, ready to shout back, but the moment he saw my face, the words died in his throat. What are you looking at? I barked. You think you're above a lecture? Look at your attitude. Stand up straight. His body reacted before his brain could. He snapped to attention, his muscles stiff. I could see his legs trembling as his mind fought against the supernatural pressure I was putting on him. My stamina was dropping fast, but my meridians were expanded and my body was reinforced by chaos chi. I could hold this long enough to make a point. In the classroom doorway, the other students were whispering in disbelief. They couldn't understand why Sun Zhao was letting me walk all over him. I went on a 10-minute rant, tearing into him about his lack of discipline and how he was wasting his family's legacy. I knew the words didn't really matter to a kid like him, but the performance did. I needed to establish dominance. Eventually, the drain on my energy became too much. I needed to leave before I hit my limit. Put more time into your training, I snorted. Get back to class. I turned on my heel and walked toward the office, keeping my pace steady and my back straight. As soon as I was gone, Sun Zhao let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for a lifetime. He turned around to find his classmates staring at him like he was a ghost. Sun Zhao, what was that? One of them shouted. Why didn't you punch him? Why were you so scared? I don't know, Sun Zhao stammered, his face turning red with embarrassment. Don't lie. Did he bribe you to act this out? I'm not acting, Sun Zhao yelled, but no one believed him. They started jeering and mocking him, calling him a coward and a disgrace to his family name. Frustrated and unable to explain the overwhelming fear he'd felt, Sun Zhao turned and stormed off. Back in my office, I watched from the window as the group fractured. My plan was working perfectly. I'd established my authority, warned the others, and created a rift in their ranks. Class 5 wasn't a united front. They were a collection of egos. By making Sun Zhao look like a coward or a sellout, I'd made it harder for them to team up against me. I just needed to let Sun Zhao stew for a few days. Once he was isolated from his friends, I could step in and play the kind mentor to win him over completely. Sun Zhao, meanwhile, was wandering the halls in a daze. He couldn't stay in the classroom with everyone mocking him, so he headed for the rooftop to clear his head. But when he tried to push open the heavy door to the roof, It wouldn't budge. It was blocked from the other side. Who the hell blocked the door? He growled, his frustration finally boiling over. Sun Zhao didn't hold back. He raised his leg and slammed his boot into the door with everything he had. The heavy wood groaned and flew open with a deafening bang. He just wanted to get to the rooftop pavilion to catch a breeze and clear his head, but as soon as he stepped out, he froze. There was Zhu Tao. He was standing in the middle of the pavilion, a needle in one hand and a pile of clothes in the other. He looked like he'd been caught doing something scandalous. To keep his training private, Zhu Tao usually wedged a wooden stick against the door so no one would bother him. Most students would just walk away if a door didn't budge, but he hadn't accounted for Sun Zhao's temper. The two of them stared at each other in a stunned, awkward silence. Sun Zhao's expression shifted from confusion to a slow, mocking grin. "What exactly are you doing?" Sun Zhao asked. Zhu Tao remained surprisingly calm. He didn't drop the needle. "My clothes are torn," he said flatly. "I'm sewing." Sun Zhao let out a long, meaningful whistle. "You came prepared with a full kit, huh?" Zhu Tao glanced at the storage box and the sewing kit by his feet. His face didn't twitch. To do a job well, a man must first sharpen his tools. "It's none of your business." Sun Zhao's eyes flashed with mischief. He didn't believe a word of it. He turned on his heel, ready to head back downstairs and tell the whole class that their tough leader was playing house on the roof. But before he could take 2 steps, Zhu Tao blurred. In a flash, Zhu Tao leaped from the pavilion and blocked the exit. His eyes were cold. "You're going to tell them, aren't you?" "Me? No way," Sun Zhao said, though he couldn't look Zhu Tao in the eye. "I'm not that kind of guy. I swear." "Then prove it," Zhu Tao snapped. "Swear an oath." Sun Zhao scoffed. He was tired of being pushed around. "Why the hell should I swear anything? We're equal in strength, Tao. You can't make me do anything. Even if I tell the whole school, what are you going to do about it?" A moment later, Sun Zhao was stumbling backward, clutching his chest. His face was twisted in agony. He could barely breathe. As Zhu Tao walked toward him with a chilling, expressionless face, Sun Zhao felt a wave of genuine terror. "I give up. I give up, okay?" Sun Zhao gasped out. "I swear I won't say a word. If I tell anyone, may I never have a son to carry on my name." Zhu Tao finally stopped. He let out a cold snort and stepped back. "Smart move." Sun Zhao rubbed his chest, the pain still throbbing through his ribs. He looked at his classmate with wide, disbelieving eyes. "When did you level up? You're not just mid-tier anymore. You've reached high tier, haven't you?" Zhu Tao just arched an eyebrow. "None of your business. Now get lost and don't disturb me again. If word of this gets out, I'll handle you personally." He turned his back on Sun Zhao and walked back into the pavilion, sitting down to resume his work. Sun Zhao didn't wait around. He scrambled away, his mind racing. Just a few days ago, he and Zhu Tao had been evenly matched. They had fought at the start of the semester, and neither could get the upper hand. But just now, Zhu Tao's speed and power were on a completely different level. Sun Zhao had tried to counterattack once, but Zhu Tao had dodged it like he was moving in slow motion. It wasn't even a fight, it was a beatdown. How did he get so strong so fast? Then it clicked. Ever since Zhu Tao lost that bet to me, he'd been acting strange. He stopped hanging out with the gang. He spent all his time alone, even skipping evening activities to stay in his room. In just 1 week, his strength had skyrocketed to the high tier. Sun Zhao squinted, remembering the band-aids he'd seen on Zhu Tao's fingers earlier. He hadn't thought much of it then, but now he realized it was all connected to this special training I had assigned. Was sewing clothes really the secret technique I had promised? Was that the key to his sudden, explosive growth? Sun Zhao stood in the hallway, his heart hammering against his ribs. He realized he had been looking at me all wrong. I wasn't just a teacher. I was holding the keys to power he couldn't even imagine.